We'll call our school committee meeting for April 27th to order. If we could stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And we'll start with introduction of members.
Ted Melville, Millville.
Carrie Gaudette, Blackstone.
Dan Keefe, Blackstone.
Denise Carrier, Finance Director.
Jill Piligallerani, Director of Learner Support Services.
Matt Catalano, Millville.
Chuck Dunton, Blackstone.
Tara Scobie, Blackstone.
Irene Pinocchio, Millville.
Jason DeFalco, Superintendent.
Thank you all for being here. And looks like we have no student reps for an update tonight. Only the big one at the next meeting. There's something going on tonight. So moving on, we have consent agenda A, warrants, minutes of meeting for April 6th. And I'm looking for a motion for consent agenda A.
Second.
Motion made by Dan, second by Kerry. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It's unanimous. Then we have public forum. If there's anyone here to see us that isn't on our agenda. Moving on, school committee items. The capital stabilization fund, we have Lynn.
She's
don't have Lynn?
just a couple minutes behind, so if you
Okay.
want to.
So we'll just move something out of order
Yeah,
here.
we could go with the water system.
Okay, perfect. So Millville Elementary School Water System, we have Robert Ferrari here from Northeast Water Solutions, who has been overseeing the water
Oh, there's.
for the town of Millville since 2005. It is 2023. So we
I'm Sean
welcome-
Murphy, I also work for
Okay,
Northeast Water.
so Sean Murphy will join. There is a letter, no, that's not to do with that. So we had some recent communication that we feel it's important to keep everyone up to speed on with our water in Millville. I know we all knew about, I don't know if the newer members are aware, but we've had water issues well before 2005. Earlier this year, there was an incident where we actually had to bring water in. We weren't able to use the water. And the recommendations of this company were taken by us, by Millville, by Mass DEP, and there was some work that was going to be done, April break, that we were expecting as a school committee. However, they are contracted by the town of Millville. But we invited them here tonight just so we as a committee can all be up to speed on the water status at Millville Elementary. So, if you want to add anything before.
No, I think you summarized it well. So we thought it'd be helpful for them to be here tonight to get everybody on the same page.
All right.
All right, well, good evening. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm Bob Ferrari. I'm the president of Northeast Water Solutions. This is Sean Murphy. Sean is he's our chief operator for the Millville School. All public water systems are required to have a certified operator, okay? I served, in addition to being a professional engineer, I served as the chief operator for many years. Sean's been in that role for about a year and a half. Sean, by the way, just to point out, Sean's a resident of Millville. He, in fact, went to Millville Elementary School, and in a few more years, he's going to have a son going to Millville Elementary School. So we all have a vested interest in making sure that the water system is working correctly. Our involvement initiated in late 2005 with Millville. The school, as I'm sure you're aware, was constructed in the early 1990s. The well, you have a single well, it's a drilled bedrock well that was drilled at that time in the area, in the forested wetland area, beyond the open athletic field there. And that system, the original system was installed when the school was constructed. In late 2005, you had lead and copper monitoring that indicated a pretty severe corrosion problem, both copper and lead. At that point, your then certified operator contacted us, and one of our specialties is corrosion control, and we got involved. To put this into a certain perspective for you, all of you may have heard of the issues out in Flint, Michigan with lead corrosion. The lead and copper corrosion at Millville Elementary School made Flint look like a day at the beach. To this point in my career, and by the way, I've been in this business for 46 years, it's the worst lead and copper corrosion problems I've ever seen in my entire career. We were retained at that time by the town. We developed a very unique corrosion control program, and it was implemented. We actually did field testing of it for about a year and a half, and finally got to a point where we had effective corrosion control. And from that point forward, in roughly 2000, probably early 2008, from that point till today, the school has a perfect compliance record for lead and copper. You have never had a corrosion problem since that point in time.
Can I ask you a question? Sorry.
Sure.
Do you prefer, is it okay to ask questions while you're
By all
talking?
means.
Or what was corroding?
What was actually corroding was probably mostly brass valves and fittings. The school is plumbed with principally copper pipe, and the construction standards at the time, and even to this day to a large degree, use brass valves and fittings with copper pipe. Brass is an alloy made up principally of copper and zinc, but it also, at that time, the brass used in a lot of water fittings and valves also had lead in it, and in some cases as high as 7 or 8% lead in the alloy. The water was corrosive where it was, you're actually evolving lead, copper, and zinc out of the brass alloy. That was actually the principal source. A lot of people believe that it's the lead in the lead solders that would be the source of lead in a copper pipe system. However, at the time the school was constructed, that was a few years past the federal legislation that eliminated the use of lead-bearing solders in drinking water systems. So we recognized that it was really the brass valves and fittings that were the principal source of the lead and copper in the system. And I'll also point out, you also had zinc in the system, but it wasn't, per se considered a water quality problem. I tell you that just to start out, our involvement goes back a long time. We had limited involvement over the next year or two. Another firm was operating the system as a certified operator, and they were doing overall a good job. In 2010, we got a phone call from the then town administrator advising us that the well had failed and there was no water, and therefore school couldn't operate. We found that the well, myself and others went up to the school immediately. The well was entirely clogged with principally ferric iron oxide, okay? To the point where the entire diameter of the well pump, and the riser pipe were completely fouled with iron, and it just came to a halt. It just could no longer get water into the well or pump water out of the well. That led to a situation where the first order of business was to clean the well out. We inspected it, and then ultimately went through a re-drilling. The original well was drilled to a depth of 460 feet, and we ultimately re-drilled the well out to a depth of a little over 1,000 feet. You have a lot of upper level fractures bringing water into the well, and then the principal fractures at 142 feet. However, fractures start at 23 feet below ground surface, and which is, I'm going to come back to that. Remember that, okay? And you had some additional fractures deeper than 800 feet, which are bringing water into the well. The water has a very substantial iron content, and that iron content got worse over time. In the 1990s, you probably had 1 ppm part per million of iron in the water. That's gotten steadily worse, and the highest we've ever seen, and it was, by the way, on December 22nd of 2022, you had 42. A lot of iron. And you have manganese in the well water also. And the average manganese concentration is about 1.1 ppm. That's considered extremely high. Just so you know, the secondary limit for manganese is 0.05 ppm or milligrams per liter. Those are interchangeable terms, by the way, as far as measurement metrics. The iron secondary limit is 0.3. We've been averaging for the last probably 10 years, probably something like between 14 and 17, but we routinely see it'll spike into the 20s, and we had one spike into the 40s. The state has a advisory limit on manganese of 0.1 ppm. So the decision was made that you needed to have iron and manganese treatment. That was in 2010. At that point, we were already designing some other improvements to the system, a dedicated water storage tank, because the original tank served both fire protection and water, and that was creating headaches in water quality because you have a 60,000-gallon tank, and the school was using maybe 1,000 gallons a day, so you had very long water age. And that's bad as far as water quality, particularly from a microbiological standpoint, okay? In any event, improvements were designed, and we selected a green sand filtration process for removal of the iron and manganese. That system we did a design, it was submitted to Mass DEP, they did a review and approval, and the system was installed in late 2010. We went through a startup in, I believe it was March of 2011, and excellent results. We ultimately was commissioned. We stayed involved for about 6 months working with the certified operator, and then our role was more or less ended at that point, which was perfectly fine. And didn't have that much involvement. Occasionally, some little thing would come up, and we might get involved. On August 5th, 2013, I received another phone call from the town administrator, and she said, "We are shut down." And it was in August, so school was, you were out for the summer, but you were getting ready for the school year, and I was rather surprised, and I was told that there were volatile organic contamination of the system, and it was pretty severe. My response was, "Can you email me the analytical report so I can see what we're talking about?" I looked at the analytical report, and I called her, and by the way, it was Helen Coffin was her name. I don't know if any of you know Helen, but I called Helen back, and I said, "I don't know for sure what's going on, but I can tell you right now it involves PVC pipe, because all the volatile organics of concern are the principal constituents in solvent cement used with PVC pipe." And I was then advised, oh yes, we had a contractor come in and make some modifications to the piping system because they believed that there were problems with the green sand filtration system had gone kind of off the rails. It wasn't performing very well, and Mass DEP was involved. So, and the operator brought another engineer in, who actually I happen to know, and actually I think he's a fairly good engineer. Unfortunately, he had no experience with green sand filtration and didn't mention that until a board meeting near the end of 2013. In any event, we did an evaluation. I did that work pro bono. It was about $20,000 of work, including the analytical. And if you're wondering why I did it pro bono, it's because, and excuse the language, I was really pissed off, okay, that this system, which worked well, could get so screwed up. Long story short, we were retained. Ultimately, we were brought back in as the engineers for the system. We were retained as the certified operator for the system on December 1st, 2013. 1 hour later, the system was back in compliance because the problem wasn't to do with a lot of things that were being erroneously believed. It was simply due to get the chemical feed, the pre-oxidant feed of the hypochlorite back on what it should be and to be back in compliance. I brought with me actually the analytical record there was concerns about the physical condition of the green sand filtration system. In, I believe it was February and March of 2014, we went through a refurbishment of the system and brought it back online with another startup. Very good results. Virtually iron and manganese was non-detectable coming out. That system ran until August of 2019 with a near perfect record as far as the removal of iron and manganese. Okay, now, there's a problem with this system. The problem is in part that you've got resident iron and manganese solids, scale material, inside the distribution system in the school. We've made a number of efforts at flushing this material out. It's very difficult to do. At one point, we had automatic flush connections on the piping in the school to flush outside. You know, the long runs of piping, you know, in the school. You have long runs of dead legs, so we go to the end, put on a flush connection and blow it out of the school to flush the pipe through. There was some other issues. You know, again, no system's perfect. We occasionally had a little bit of leakage. We call it leakage, a little bit of iron sneaking through. But overall, the system performance was very good. We had one or two incidents of elevated disinfection byproducts called DBPs. Disinfection byproducts are formed by a reaction with chlorine or a chlorine derivative and organic material in the water. Typically, it's called natural organic matter. It's naturally occurring in the environment. The well has always had at least a modest level of organic material. We run analysis for TOC, total organic carbon. That's kind of the proxy indicator of organic material in the well. You typically would have 3 or 4 ppm. It's a little high for a groundwater well, but it was manageable. We had, I believe, 2 incidents, one in 2016, and if I recall, and we had another one in November of 2018, okay? And the one in 2016, in looking back at the record now, based upon what I know from our most recent work the last few months, what I believe was actually happening is we were getting occasional increases in organic carbon in the water supply. I've done a lot of work in the last 2 months to document a lot of this, and by using proxy indicators, things like precipitation and aerial photography, to look at surface water in proximity to the well and things like that. We thought it was we were getting slugs of iron maybe coming in and getting through, or we were perhaps overdosing our chlorine. I think what it really was is we had this variable that we didn't fully appreciate. No one did, frankly. And the other incident that occurred in end of November of 2018 was our fault entirely. We had increased the chlorine dosage because there was elevated iron in the water, and so we had to increase our oxidant dosage to precipitate it properly for removal in the filter system. But then all of a sudden it dropped down again. It is highly variable. And we didn't react fast enough. We had a little excess chlorine in the water, and it created a disinfection byproducts problem. And since that point in time, there's been enhanced scrutiny by Mass DEP. I had a meeting with them May 15th of 2019. And in fact, that's where I met Peter Caruso. He'd been on the job about a week as the town administrator or town manager. And I was casually acquainted with Peter from a previous work we did in Situate, Massachusetts. In any event, there's been a lot of analytical monitoring and oversight by Mass DEP. And the system was still operating very well regarding removal of iron and manganese. On February 18th, 2020, Mass DEP came in to do a sanitary survey. This is a routine inspection. And during that inspection, we collectively made note that a beaver dam had been created. Some beavers had moved into the area in proximity to the well, and they did what they do best. They're excellent engineers, by the way. and they built a dam. And what happens when you build a dam is water builds up behind the dam. And the water buildup began moving towards the well, and the topography allowed that. And that beaver dam, ultimately, the water approached to within 35 feet of the wellhead. And this is important because we began noticing that your TOC level in the well began going up, and we saw a gradual increase in 2020, 6 and 8, 6, 7, 8, 9. We were doing quarterly analysis at that point. We were having disinfection byproducts problems, and plus we were experiencing, again, a very elevated iron and manganese content in the water. That problem has not gone away, and it exists to this day. A third-party consultant was brought in, and by the way, I encouraged the town to do it. I said, I think we need another set of eyes in here, particularly somebody who's more knowledgeable than we are on disinfection byproducts. We're knowledgeable, but a person was brought in who has some recognized expertise in the matter, and he did an evaluation and felt that we were doing things correctly, and it was a matter of controlling the chlorine dosage. There's been some ongoing, we've been in and out of compliance on disinfection byproducts, but that beaver dam is still there, and this has become a bone of contention. A decision was made probably about six or 7 or 8 months ago that we should change the chemistry from the pre-oxidation chemistry from sodium hypochlorite, which is a form of chlorine, to potassium permanganate. That actually is the original oxidant that was designed for use with green sand filtration, and it does work, and it works well. We were authorized to do a complete inspection and rebedding and restartup of the green sand filtration system in February. Sean and one of our other senior operators, Glenn Albee, who's very familiar with the school and the system, by the way, did the lion's share of that work. I was smart enough to just let them do their job and stay out of their way and just provide some commentary periodically. And they did a good job. And during the startup, we implemented a fairly extensive program of analytical monitoring. And it was very problematic. It took weeks to achieve compliance on iron and manganese. There is still elevated disinfection byproducts. But in doing this, we also really made note of, we did a lot more analysis of TOC. And you've got staggering levels in the water. It's between 12 and 16. That's about a 400% increase. And that is an untenable situation from the standpoint of the performance of the green sand filtration system. We're in a position where we have to over-oxidize the water, okay? Now, when we're using hypochlorite, that means we're going to form disinfection byproducts because that organic carbon, a certain fraction of it, 40 to 50% of that organic carbon is in the dissolved or soluble form. The balance is particulate material, okay? And it's the soluble organic carbon that is being chemically oxidized and forms disinfection byproducts. Naturally, the intent is, okay, we'll switch to potassium permanganate, and that'll take care of the disinfection byproducts problem. Well, that is true, except we have a problem. And that problem is that we're still going to have to overfeed the potassium permanganate because in addition to precipitating the iron and manganese, that's an oxidant demand. We have the oxidant demand of the organic carbon. And when you overfeed potassium permanganate, you don't get disinfection byproducts, but you get water that ranges in color from pink to purple. And I don't think now, by the way, it's not harmful to you from a health standpoint, but unless you happen to be drinking pink lemonade, most people don't want to drink water that's pink to purple in color. It's going to be rather off-putting, to say the least. And I also have concerns about not the organic carbon it's a direct indicator, but it's also a proxy indicator. And this is where I want to come back now to the well and pull this back for you. I'm unfortunately in a very serious professional debate with the other consultant, who, as I said before, I respect him highly. I think he's extremely knowledgeable in disinfection byproducts. But not so much in green sand filtration. And the reason this beaver pond is scaring the hell out of me, okay, and I'm not trying to overstate it, it's scaring the hell out of me, because when we have about maybe 10 feet of soil and organic material overlying the bedrock where that well is, okay? I do a lot of geology and hydrogeology work, in addition to a lot of water treatment work. And I spent weeks in the summer of 2010 with one of our geologists scouring the entire site and the surrounding area for an alternative location for the well. And we studied the bedrock outcrops, and we looked at what they call foliation and fracturing. You got a lot of superficial outcrops of bedrock. That's the actual bedrock material. It's not like a big boulder sitting on top of the ground. So we can see that there's direct hydraulic connectivity through these superficial fractures into the underlying bedrock. You've got water-bearing fractures in that well. The casing ends you got about 20 feet of steel casing. Below that casing, 3 feet below that casing, which is at the most 10 or 12 feet into the bedrock, you've got your first water-bearing fracture, and then you have another one. We have 23 feet down, 27 feet down, and you've got multiple fractures down to about 90 feet, and then you have a big one at 142, and then you have another one about 190 something. When the normal groundwater table in that well is about 10 feet below the top of casing, okay? And that well is on a mound. And you got to kind of picture this. The well's up here, the mound goes down, and now you have the surface water from that beaver pond right there, 35 feet away horizontally from the well. And that water table in that beaver pond is roughly the same as the water table in the well, maybe a little higher because it's a little perched. Previously, before the beaver pond, you had dry ground, okay, above the water. You could find the water table. When it rained, if it was a heavy rainstorm, you get some saturation. Some of the water percolates into the ground. The ground is temporarily saturated. And that's when I think we got an occasional spike of organic carbon. Organic carbon is natural to the decaying organic material at the surface. You have a couple or 3 feet of organic alluvium material overlying a thin layer of glacial till, okay? And as water goes through, it brings both particulate and dissolved organic material with it. And if it gets into the fractures, it gets into that well. Why? Because the well's pumping. It's drawing water to it. Now you have a beaver pond. Now you have a permanent water table sitting right there in close proximity to the well. Mass DEP has repeatedly sent directives to the town, get rid of the beaver pond, because it's a known contaminant threat. Now we have water from the bottom of that pond saturated all the way down to the water table. And now you have a direct pathway that can get into the well through the fractures. It's a badly weathered bedrock, okay? It crumbles. It's very friable, okay? I've spent a lot of time with it. Why am I super concerned? It's not just the organic carbon that can create disinfection byproducts. You have, in addition to decaying, say, plant material, you have fecal material. You could have dead biomass out there. You've got all kinds of bacteria in the ground. Beaver ponds and areas where you have beavers are known for giardia. They're known for cryptosporidium. You do not want to get cryptosporidium or giardia into your body, okay? By the way, your saving grace all these years is the chlorination and filtration system. And now we're about to take the chlorination system away. Okay, chlorine is a disinfectant, okay? It's a very effective one, by the way. And I believe that this well is under surface water influence now. It wasn't before, it is now, okay? The standard required treatment for wells under groundwater, under surface water influence, chlorination and filtration. So I'm being asked, now folks remember, I'm a registered professional engineer. I'm also a certified operator, I'm also a licensed general contractor, okay? This guy's a certified operator, all right? We're the people taking all of the professional, legal responsibility for this system. And I am on record saying you got to get rid of that beaver dam because it's supposed to be my PE stamp going on the design documents. It's my job to protect public health, okay? Now, I'm laying it out for you from my position. I brought some visual aids here to show you the extent of the surface water in that area of the pond. If you want to look at it, I can take you through it very quickly. But this is the dilemma I have right now. I would love to switch you into permanganate if I didn't have this problem.
Excuse me, why can't we get rid of the beavers in the beaver dam?
The town of Millville we've been told point blank, verbally and in
They're not interested
an
in-
email, that they do not want to remove the beavers or harm the beavers in any way.
When is the last time you sat with the Board of Selectmen in Millville and gave them this
It's
kind
been
of-
years. It's been a number of years. That communication has come in either direct verbal communications or email communications from Mr. Caruso, okay? And also his other consultant, who as recently as yesterday was saying the beaver dam in writing is not a problem. I have officially let the town know as of about, 5 o'clock yesterday afternoon that I will not accept that, and if necessary, we will resign from the project and resign as operators of the system.
That is why we asked him to come here tonight. That's the exact
What
reason
can we
he's
do
sitting.
about, try to exert influence to the town of Millville to
Well, I have a
take
few more
action?
questions about just the state of the well and what you're, if you could just back up, we're definitely gonna get to that, Chuck, but, you said it's 1,000 feet deep.
Yeah, the drill depth
It
is
was drilled
1,033
From
feet.
460 to 1,000,
Yeah.
and fractures up, down to 190 feet that
Well,
you know of, or?
in the original well, we documented fractures. We did a video inspection of the well
Okay.
repeatedly. You have a lot of fractures down to about 192 feet, give or take. Then you're actually in a pretty tight zone, and then we get down below 800 feet, and we found there's more fractures down there that contribute water to the well. Back in 2010, the well was down to about 3 gallons a minute, which can't support the school. And we said, we've got to redevelop this well, and we've got to find more water yield, more recharge capacity. So because there was any other location in that area, you're going to get a well loaded with iron and manganese because of the bedrock, the geochemistry.
So
of
the iron and
bedrock.
manganese is coming from the ground, it is
From the
not,
bedrock, yeah.
but the brass and copper valves,
Oh, no, that's inside the school.
that was called,
plumbing.
that's inside the building, we're never going to be able to,
Well, no, we've dealt with that with the corrosion control program, okay? Which, by the way, is not an unusual circumstance to have happen.
'Cause we all
So when we had one option we felt with the well. We did an evaluation and said, listen, you can spend a ton of money, but you're gonna get another well, which is gonna have iron and manganese in it regardless. So we felt that our best option was to just start drilling. And we had to get down below 800 feet to find any more significant water-bearing fractures in
but
the well.
that's when you came to the iron and manganese. 'cause
No,
you
the
meant
iron and
that-
manganese was already in the well.
Excuse me, did you think of maybe having more, it's the pipe, more casing?
Well,
You're only 20 feet? with
You have to be a
some-
little careful here, okay? Number one, we can't be 100% sure, is it just the upper one or two fractures bringing this water in, or could it be fractures deeper in the ground? Just to digress for a second, by way of example, in Harrisville, Rhode Island, St. Teresa's Church, this is about 2007, they brought us in. They were having bacteria contamination every time it rained in their well. We did an inspection. They had a fracture zone that was about 80 to 90 feet below grade in the bedrock. We put a Jaswell, what they call a Jaswell seal on that. Problem went away because we sealed off those particular fractures. It's the nature of, we don't know for sure, there's vertical fracturing, there's horizontal fracturing, which exact fractures. So our problem is the well has limited capacity. We got to be very careful here. And so the concern is that if we start sealing off upper level fractures, we could do it, but there's two problems. One, we're going to reduce the yield of the well, which is already, you probably don't want to get any less, you don't want it to be any less than it is right now because it's not great. Number two, you've still got this issue of this beaver pond in close proximity to the well. And that is a recognized contaminant threat, and you are still under a directive from Mass DEP to get rid of the beaver pond because of the perceived threat. And I think it's in the best, I realize it's not in the best interest of the beavers, but I think it's in the best interest of public health and safety. Okay?
I don't think our students should be in that school. If we should make arrangements, think of options in case an emergency arose and come September, we have to have a plan B.
Well, so just to give you all an update on a little bit more around what we just heard for a timeline. I know you gave us a lot of dates and you were like, it was perfect from this year to this year, but it did seem like there was a time where every few months we were getting your water's not drinkable, and we would shut everything off in Millville. This is before any of our time. Not your time, but our time on the committee, or
Yeah.
I can base it on when my kids were in that building, when they were younger. But I can tell all of you that since Jason has been here, nobody has drank that water. As much as you
no, I
say it's
understand that,
safe,
yeah.
as much as the town is paying $40,000 plus a year for this water treatment, Millville's paying this company. When Jason got here, he got his first, your water's contaminated, and he said, we're not doing this, and we have never gone backwards.
Right.
He has always had, the kids bring water bottles, we have bottled water in the school for and maybe I haven't been in there in actually a few years, but.
They were wrapped.
They're
Yeah, the
wrapped.
bubbles were all
They were wrapped, they are wrapped, but we were using it for cooking. It is used for cleaning. It is, so for at least 5 years, nobody has drank that water.
Yeah,
That is
I
a
agree with you,
blessing
okay?
in
Yeah.
disguise. With the Beaver Dam, because nobody told us in 2020 that it was,
We just
there was
learned
a
of that.
Beaver Dam. I think we only learned about it last fall
Yeah.
by,
All right.
Yes.
If I could respond a little bit here. Prior to the implementation of the effective corrosion control, the school had been using bottled water for a number of years.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, everybody was terrified to drink the water, and understandably, I mean, with the level of lead and copper in it. it
what
was
year is
staggering.
that you're talking about?
I'm sorry?
What year are you going
Well,
back to?
we were brought in December of 2005, so it was, and again, and we didn't get the problem completely resolved. We had to do a design, get it approved by the state, and then we did about a year and a half of basically full-scale treatability work until we could get it.
The water was on in the building, though, I believe.
Yeah,
was
the
on the
whole,
building.
I was a student
Started-
there. The whole time
Yeah.
I was a student.
2006, 7, my kids were there.
Water was on.
They brought a water bottle, but
Correct.
the water was on.
Bubblers were cautioned
You could take
off.
a drink in the gym, in the cafeteria, you could drink it.
Yeah.
But I can tell you without hesitation, that has not been on in 5 years. And fast forward to this February, when we brought in, I mean, you were on we were trying to get a truck, we got
We did. We got the
trucks.
truck in. It was
We got trucks,
$4,500.
so we could cook. So as far as the kids being there and it being safe or healthy, I think we've done the best we can with that. I'm glad that we can say that, because there wasn't a superintendent before that we would have been able to say that with. They turned it on, turned it off, turned it on, turned it off, with the letters. And the letters are how many weeks behind for contaminants?
Well, if we have an issue with, say, well, we haven't had any bacteria issues, yeah, there's a certain time delay. I can't tell you exactly how long it is, just because we do analytical work. You get the results. Now, typically, we react very quickly when we get the results in. Well, I want to come back to something here. The system was started up, was performing well. This is back in 2011. Then there were problems in 2012 into 13. So again, there was problematic drinking the water. After we upgraded the system in 2014, a very distinct recollection, the then principal, and I cannot remember her name right now, we got the work done. We had done a 10-day startup with extremely good results, and we had a little mini ceremony in there, and I drank the first glass of water, and to demonstrate that it was of good quality. It met all the drinking water standards. It met or exceeded all the standards. I believe water was used for a period of time. We actually did other improvements to the system, but as of probably 4 or 5 years ago, there were concerns, and because the system will evolve discolored water occasionally, principally because we have resident iron and manganese to a large degree in the piping system, which, for years we've been trying to get it all flushed out. Now, the understandable complaint or comment from the town is, we're spending all this money for water that no one's drinking, and I agree. And one of the things I've done, I've repeatedly said, listen, folks, we've got to get this system back to the most consistent baseline we can get to, so we can demonstrate for a sustained period that you have high-quality water that can be consumed by people, okay? I mean, it is being used, had been used, I say, for toilets, it's been used for cleaning, even been used in the cafeteria. Now, with what was being experienced recently this spring, I agree. You cannot risk using the water, and I'm very concerned for consumption or even cooking in the cafeteria. So we're not disagreeing with that at all, okay? The school is in a very difficult position. By its nature, this is an intermittent public water system. The school normally operates, 5 days a week during the school year. You go through long periods when no water is being used. Water age is always a headache, and that's why we put it, we use a smaller tank. We even reduce the control set points in the tank to have less water in it during periods when we know you're going to have, vacation breaks or summer breaks and things like that. So there's a lot of things that need to be done on the system, okay, to optimize that. Right now, we're in a situation where we've got you in a situation where, based upon the most recent data, you've got good quality water from an iron and manganese standpoint, but we're having to push the chlorine dosage, which means you're probably having, we have some results on disinfection byproducts, which are somewhat elevated. And now, disinfection byproducts are not an acute health risk, but it is considered a lifetime health risk, and I'm not discounting that. I wouldn't want my kids drinking that either, okay? So some decisions have to be made here, okay? Collectively, the town, the school committee, whoever, you can't stay where you are, okay? We all agree improvements have to be made, but right now, from my position, and as I said in an email last night, a pretty long one, and again this morning to the town, if you want me to write the dissertation, I will, but it's going to cost you a lot of money, and I don't think and it's not going to be put you in any better position than you are right now, okay? If you want me to do it, I'll do it, but I don't think you should. So can we come to an agreement on what has to be done? But I will tell you point blank that Northeast Water Solutions will not go forward accepting that beaver pond and that contaminant threat to the well.
Yeah,
and I don't care what anybody else says.
Can I just add something to that, Bob? And I very much appreciate the way you explained everything. It's super technical. It feels like a chemistry class. But I think it was important to make sure that not just the school committee, but our families and friends that are tuning in at home understand exactly what's going on. I think from my perspective, there are 4 major issues with this. And Bob, you've said it repeatedly. I've read your emails. You put it in writing. The issues with the beaver dam clearly are very significant. The second are the chemical byproducts. And again, you just said it, which I appreciate you saying, that, use over time is a problem. And I don't want any of our children dealing with any of that. They're coming to school to learn. They shouldn't have to deal with these kinds of issues. The third is the notices that we receive are about 4 weeks behind. So the reason that we took such a hard line when this happened in, the fall of 2018 or whenever it was, I didn't even know this was an issue coming in, was because of the lag time. And that's not Bob, it's just the testing is done, it goes up for analysis, and then by the time we get the notices, it's 4 weeks after the test was done. So we can't have the kids dealing with that and the staff dealing with that and then say 4 weeks later, oh, we just learned, sorry, let's not use it moving forward. And then I'm just going to mention a 4th thing that I think is important that the school committee understands. When we trucked that water in, we had to go off of a bulk water list from Mass DEP. There are very few people. Scott pounded the pavement to find folks that would actually do this in the winter, because many companies don't, because it freezes, and that essentially nullifies the ability to use the water in the tank. But we did find a company. They came down. We filled it in Woonsocket. We flushed the tank, we filled the tank with fresh water, and then Millville refused to pay the bill. So we ultimately paid it. It was $4,500, but we did that because if we didn't and we needed to access this service again, the one vendor that we found, we couldn't have them turn around and say, no, you never paid me the first time. So I just want to mention that as a fourth issue, because we're not going to compromise the safety of our kids with
And can
that,
you tell us why Millville didn't pay the bill?
because the water's fine to drink. That was my,
But Millville has been paying you since 2005, 2010.
We've been
as
getting
the
paid as
primary.
the operator since December 1st, 2013. And when we've done our engineering services, which has occurred, intermittently since 2005, we were paid for those services, other than the pro bono work we did in 2013.
And to the best of my recollection, and we did do some digging, the water has never been the expense of the school. It is a supplied piece of the lease, in a sense, like
Right.
a public health, like, building, you'd have to have running water to be able to have a public building, so.
we also, at the complex, we don't pay a water bill at the complex. That's a town-owned building, we don't do that. So there are issues of this that are first and foremost significant potential health issues. There are issues with the system that Bob's trying to do. We have issues with, and I'm going to be blunt, just the politics of it, and there shouldn't even be an issue. I mean, how do you, what are the optics on water? How do you even fight that from the other side of the?
Elementary school.
It doesn't even make sense to me. Like, I'm upset we're sitting here talking about beaver dams. This is lunacy.
Do you want to share with us what you have here for,
Yeah, I brought, and again, I apologize for the low tech. What this is the proximity of the surface water to the well is what is the principal driver of the contaminant threat, okay?
from the beavers?
From the beavers, or the pond created by the beavers, okay?
And all the wildlife that goes attracted to that. It's not just the beavers.
Oh, no, exactly, that's exactly right.
Well, yeah.
There's all kinds of
Yeah.
wildlife out there, probably a lot of things we don't even know about. What I'm showing you here, for example, is, and again, and I'll come up closer, I've actually got a series of here. But this is today, okay? You see this dark, the well is right here. This is the extent of this beaver pond. There's a little finger that comes up here right next to the well, okay? That's what you have today, okay? By comparison, in 2019, this is in June of 2019, your well is over here. This pond this was the typical wetlands pond you had, okay? I will come around to everybody, all right? Here's an aerial. This is in March of 2020, probably 2, 3, 4 months into the formation of the beaver dam. Your well's here. Compare this to this, if you will. You can see it's expanding, okay? Up here, this is June of 2022, and here's your well. Now, what is unique about June? It looks like it's actually receded a little bit. We had a drought last summer, okay? You had 1 inch of water, 1 inch precipitation in June. It receded back, okay? But we can't count on having droughts all the time. By the way, in September, we had 8 inches of water, okay? Which is why we're back to this, all right? Now, I have other photos in here. I'll be able to even leave these with you.
Yeah, I've been through all that.
Yeah, I know you, but again, this is today. Here's your well, and there's actually a little finger of water. What this dark outline is, that's on the formal Mass DEP GIS site of what they believe the wetlands delineation happens to be. It's reasonably accurate, but this water finger comes up here, it's very close to your well.
Where's the well? The
well is this little circle right here, okay? It says approximate well location right there. This water comes up within 35 feet of the well.
Yeah, I've been out there, it's a,
Yeah, this is in June of 2019, pre-beaver dam, okay? And this is about where the beaver dam was ultimately created, but you can see your well's up here, and your wetted area is down here. If you look at March of 2020, this wetland area is expanding and your well is here. It's now starting to encroach up in here. And then this is in June of last year where it seems to have receded slightly because we were in a
Right,
drought.
yeah.
Okay? Now, I have other photos I can show you years going back to 2005 when it pretty much looked like that. So again, this is today. The beaver dam is down here and actually down here, and this whole area is just, it's a big pond, okay? And there's actually a finger that comes up here, and you can see it. We have photographs of this, by the way. It's in very close proximity. It's 35 feet, we've measured 35 feet from the well. This is, again, this is June of 2019. Your well's up here, and you can see, there's a pond there, but it's very far away. This is in March of 2020, shortly after the formation of the dam, which is down here. It's getting very close, okay? And this is last June, where it had receded back because of the drought.
And, yeah, we didn't intend.
We had a pretty nasty drought last summer. And in fact, Sean's got photographs. He was out there in August taking pictures, and, you know, where we took, in June, and in May or June, we took pictures in the water. You can see the wellhead, you can see the surface of the water. It goes back in August, and it's receded back because of the drought. And then early September, 8 inches of rain. Go back to that. Okay. That's our basic problem, okay, as far as this whole issue of organics and pathogen threats, et cetera.
Who found the beaver dam?
Who found it?
You said it was
Well,
February
let's say
18th of 20.
it was formally noted by Mass DEP on their sanitary survey inspection on February 18th, 2020.
I can get rid of them.
Okay. It had probably been formed, you know, sometime, you know.
That's the first
was it-
time you heard of it?
Honestly,
I know. Oh, thank you, Ted.
I was out there, so it was the first time I actually saw it. It hadn't been that noticeable. It was probably at that point, had it been there for 4 weeks or 6 weeks or 8 weeks, not 100% sure. But the pond wasn't that big yet, okay? It wasn't all that noticeable. We collectively noticed it because, you know, once you get close enough, you can kind of see it. You can see the gnawed trees, you know, the felled trees, you know. Beaver activity is pretty obvious once it gets very apparent, okay? You can't miss it. And it became, you know, and of course, it was probably one of the first review comments on the sanitary survey, you know, get rid of the beaver dam, get rid of the beavers. You know,
In
blah, blah, blah.
2020?
2020.
Is this one beaver dam?
I'm
Or is
sorry?
this a lot
I
of
think there's
beaver
like,
dams?
I think there's
How does
like
this
2
work?
lodges, but like the problem is they've dammed up the flow of water, so this,
They get pretty
this
big.
body of water is just snowballing.
How many kids do we have at Millville?
Just under 400.
Under 400 in Millville.
Yeah.
So we're 8 beavers per versus 400 kids? Smart.
I think we know what to do.
So when you were notified about it in February of 20, Millville was at the same time? The selectman, the town administrator?
Well, I did not make a presentation to the Board of Selectmen. I haven't been in front of the Board of Selectmen, I don't know, 5 years, it might even be longer. I can't quite recall that, but well, first of all, a written report is issued by Mass DEP, but before that report even came in, we made immediate notification to the town, said, listen, this has to be addressed. It's not, at this point in time, it's not a severe problem, but it's not going away, and it's in close enough proximity that it's going to be a contaminant threat. We just, at that point in time, we didn't know what the maximum extent of the pond was still pretty small. We don't, you know, we couldn't tell what the maximum extent was going to be, but the dam, the original dam was identified. Now the town did make some efforts to, you know.
Divert the water?
Divert some, drain some water away, but.
They did?
Beavers do what they do best.
When did they do
A
that?
4-inch pipe the beaver clogged it up within a couple hours, I'm sure.
Who requested that, do you know?
Well, we requested that of the town, and the town, I'm not sure who exactly went out there. Was it somebody from, you know, Department of Transportation go out there? I don't know for sure, but we were told that, you know, a crew was dispatched, and they're trying to put a drain pipe in under the access road to the wellhead, okay? Because it drains, it has to drain under the access road. but that drainage, whatever was going on with it was, it was not effective in preventing the
So in your
formation of
best
dam.
guess, when was that crew dispatched? Month and?
I'd have to go back and look at my
Okay.
notes. okay?
June 2020, I think.
It was that summer?
Based off other people's accounts, I wasn't an employee of
Yeah.
Northeast Water, but that's when I was told that the town made attempts to.
Okay.
The formal notification from Mass DEP, I believe their written sanitary survey was received probably, I'll say April of 2020. But we'd had a preliminary notification. We communicate with them all the time, and they, so we had a preliminary notification, and we made the town aware of it. And I was out there for the sanitary survey. Glenn Albee and myself were there, and two representatives of Mass DEP were there, and we notified the town very quickly of that.
So on your larger picture there with the red outline, what is that outline?
That, I believe, is...
Just the parcel for the
Yeah,
school.
That's the school, yeah, that's the overall.
So
Yeah, what we're talking about here is, I believe, this red line, this is, I think,
The
the boundary
property?
of the school's property. Okay, up on Berthollet Way.
So, pre-Beaver Dam of 2020, there were already all these other water issues. We drilled from 460 feet to 1,000 feet, but still contaminated from ground up iron and manganese. Tell me, like, what kind of conversations happened about, so fractures in the well down to 190 feet. In the years from 2013 until now, what kind of conversations have there been about a new well?
We haven't really had any significant conversations. We did an evaluation, and in fact, there's substantial documentation, okay? I rechecked it today. I've written 75 technical memoranda to the town of Millville since 2006, let's say, beginning of 2006. And we did a very extensive evaluation of if there was opportunities for an alternative well. And there are certainly areas where you could drill a well. At that time, the issue was simply, if you drill a well into this bedrock formation, where it doesn't matter where you go, underlying Millville, you've got, and not just Millville, by the way, but Blackstone and going down into northern Rhode Island, you've got, the bedrock has substantial iron and manganese. So the thought process was, the question, well, can we drill another well and get out of this iron and manganese problem? And the response was no, okay, not really. So you could invest, $50,000 or $100,000 and drill another well and get the water to the school, but we are still going to need an iron and manganese treatment system. At that time, disinfection byproducts was not an issue because, number one, there was no chlorination system being used, and number two, there wasn't a significant surface water contaminant threat to the existing well. So the focus was on iron and manganese. So again, I mean, if the school committee wants, I can provide you those memos, which it detailed out extensive geologic and geophysical investigations, our recommendations, mapping that we did, and budgets that were put together for alternatives for constructing another well. I think
know the
understandably,
years
the town
that
said
might
there's
have
no point to spend this money if we're not really going to resolve the iron and manganese problem, which would not have been resolved.
I mean, when was that?
That was
From
2010,
2013.
2011.
It was, okay. I mean, I have a well, I live in Millville, you live in Millville, you live in Millville. Do you treat your water?
I do. Not to
Do
this
you use-
extent, but I do
what
have a
you use?
filter.
I knew your answer was gonna be yes, that's why I'm asking you first. You work for, so what do you do for
A
your
simple
home?
water softener.
At the well, in the basement, at
yes.
the entrance of your home? Do you have anything?
I'm a special, I live on Uxbridge Town Water.
So I have a comment that
Sorry.
the volume of water and the size of the system. And, it's different from a household.
Honestly, they go weekends using none.
The water that just sits there, it's not being used.
Yeah.
Millville School might use 10,000 gallons on a big week. Now, pumping-wise, that's like 20,000 gallons out of the well, because the water quality is so poor. 50% of the water we make,
getting to-
we're using to wash the filters with.
The filters basically are, their capacity is restored by backwashing the collected solids out of them. And there's a settling tank and dry well system that's installed adjacent to the athletic field on the campus, okay?
I would love to see those. I know they're from 2010 and 2011, but in your, no timeline there, but at your earliest convenience, I would love to see whatever evaluations were done. Because personally, I've had a conversation with the chair of the selectmen in Millville already, asking why we're not talking about a new well. Yes, treatment, it's a public building, there's a lot of property there. You're right about Millville being ledge, but every homeowner in Millville has a well, except for Kempton Street. They do get, but they have their own issues with the Uxbridge supply, so as a taxpayer of Millville, and as a town, I mean, I've lived there my entire life, minus a few years, and it's always been well water. But of course, we don't pay the bill. So I would love to see that. I don't know why that's not being looked at after years and years and years of all of these issues. The water's still gonna have to be monitored. It's a public school building, but insert beaver dam into that backfield, like bring it to the back of the school. I'm not into geology, but I do know that where there are pine trees, the ground is softer. That's all, that's everything behind that school. So I just, in my opinion, as a chair of the school committee, as a lifelong member of Millville, I have already asked why we're not looking for a new well.
I somewhat
The
agree
new
with
water
you.
supply, like the 33 years, now you're telling me, I didn't even know about the fractures, because it's already, like, if that was my home, I would already have a new well.
If the funding could be made somehow to do
Well, I had
that,
a conversation with the chair of the selectmen, and she
and,
is
like,
also on the capital committee, and
We're-
told me that could happen this year, but it was, that conversation ended.
worst case, if it proves to be of similar water quality, potentially use it for irrigation purposes, so that way it's not
The
money.
new well?
Yeah, potential, if it proves to be of similar or worse quality than the existing well, you could still use it for
It won't have the
irrigation.
fractures, it won't be getting the groundwater
So
in immediately.
So the fractures are good down low, right? Not so good closer to the surface.
190
As a general
feet.
statement, yes,
Right.
that's correct. The whole purpose of using what they call steel casing in a bedrock well, what happens is you drill through which is pretty easy to do, you drill through the overburdened soils, okay? And then you start drilling into the bedrock, and then you take a steel casing and effectively you hammer it into the bedrock, and the recommendation, the standard protocol is you want to hammer it in about 10 feet, and you seal it with a cement grout or a bentonite grout. Then you put your drill rod through the casing and you start drilling down into the bedrock. The casing, the reason you drive it a minimum of 10 feet into the bedrock is so you can prevent, overburdened water or surface water from getting into the well, because that's a major contaminant threat. So the wells are designed to prevent that from happening. The problem is when you have bedrock, when you have a badly weathered bedrock like you have up here, and you have fractures and right near the top of the bedrock, near the interface with the overburdened soils, that's another pathway for the water coursing through the soils, either precipitation percolating through or percolating horizontally, gets into the fracture system and gets into the well. And that's exactly what we're trying to prevent. And by the way, you mentioned pine trees before. One of the characteristics of pine trees is they grow in acidic soils, okay? And so the water coming out of the well is also, on the acidic side. And that is a factor in it being more corrosive, and that is a factor in it eluting or evolving more iron and manganese out of the bedrock, geochemistry, okay? Again, we could go on for hours and, I don't think you want me to do a dissertation on that, and it'd take hours and we'd all be falling asleep. But having said that, when the concern was capacity, strong consideration was given to let's look for an alternative well location, on or in close proximity to the school campus property, okay? And we did a lot of work associated with that, and the conclusion was that you might find capacity, but the water quality wasn't going to be any different because the bedrock formation was effectively the same formation. And again, that's consistent with, a lot of other experience in this part of the world. All right, it's not. Now, if we were in close proximity to the Blackstone River, I'd say let's go with a sand and gravel well, because the Blackstone River is cut principally through some pretty deep sand and gravel deposits. That's a characteristic of the Blackstone River Basin, the entire basin. But we're not. We're up on a knob of badly weathered plutonic bedrock that got pushed through about 650 million years ago, and it's loaded
But there are
iron.
houses on that street. There are, the chair of the selectmen lives in the house that is adjacent to that school property.
Yeah.
And so I say, we've given it, they're over 30 years. I don't think it should, be a dead conversation. I think it needs to be considered.
I will be more
In your
than happy to
most
provide
professional
information.
opinion,
Yeah.
with the relationship with the town for as long as you've had it and all of our water at that school. I already heard you loud and clear, the beavers need to go, but where is this, what's the lifetime of this well as it stands?
Wells routinely can be, we typically, unless there's a significant defect.
Which we've had, I think.
But my point is, a drilled bedrock well should have a nominal 50-year life on it. And I've worked with wells that are 100 years old, bedrock wells. I've worked with bedrock wells that failed in 2 years. Okay, but typical life is certainly 40 to 50 years. Basically, with re-drilling this well out, you're back to effectively a new well, because we re-drilled it, cleaned it out, redeveloped it. Now, again, you've got iron and manganese in that well, and now we've got a very significantly increased level of organic carbon and probably other potentially deleterious materials in that well, and it's got to be dealt with one way or another.
So besides removing the beavers, was there another recommendation to Mill?
Well, once the beavers are removed, we can now we can then reassess. We have a better opportunity to use permanganate and not have to overfeed, which would then give us discolored water. Or maybe you do want to reconsider sticking with the chlorine. You could, all right? But right now, you're going to have problems no matter what chemistry you use, okay? You're going to have problems, and that's not going away. And please understand this, okay? I'm not in the business of looking for ways to extract money from people, okay? I've been working for this town since 2005. We've been operating since end of 2013, okay? Part of that sanitary survey, years ago, you had your certified operator coming in 3 days a week, 3 times a week. And we upgraded the system with remote monitoring so we could monitor the system 24/7, 365, all the critical instrumentation parameters. And we reduced the number of visits to 1 day a week. The state insisted we go back to 3 days a week, in 2020. We did that for over 2 years. Our rate structure for the town was based upon 1 visit per week. We did not increase that rate structure until this year. We went over 2 years on the old rate structure. We were optimistic we could convince Mass DEP that we met all the criteria for one day a week visits, but they don't want to hear it, okay? So we've tried to do everything we can to moderate costs to the town. I will be the first to tell you, you're spending a lot of money for a relatively small amount of water. Your unit cost for the water is very high. That's a function of the circumstances you find yourself in. We would love to work with the town to resolve some of these issues, but right now, everybody's in a real difficult position right now.
Are you willing to share what that rate structure is?
I'll send you the contract, okay?
I mean, I'm
I'll be
sure I
glad
can
to.
find it in the
Off the top of
town.
my head, I can't, I don't have the numbers off the top of my head. I mean, I'll show you. Here's the old one and here's the new one, okay? But we've been doing 3-day a week. And by the way, Sean lives in Millville. He lives, 15 minutes away?
5 minutes.
5 minutes away.
Millville's very small.
And he often makes a lot more frequent visits because he's so close by, and he'll come by the school if he thinks, because he can watch the system on his phone. And he gets alert notices and alarms and things like that, and so he goes down there a lot, so. But I'll give you any information you want. We have no secrets, okay? I'll give you the old contract, I'll give you the one we sent the
So
town.
it's all public too in the town budget. I just didn't know if you knew, if you could share it with everybody, because I did ask this chair of the selectmen, and she told me, but I don't want to misrepresent you. Any questions for?
You want to go?
I've been answered.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. In your email to the superintendent on April 17th, you put, the Mass DEP has repeatedly directed the town to review the beaver dam and eliminate the pond. That's correct?
That's correct.
And so there's a directive from the Mass DEP. So, and the town of Millville doesn't agree with their directive?
Apparently.
And so isn't there any recourse that the DEP?
I'll be brutally honest with you, I'm amazed that Mass DEP hasn't come in here and slapped you with a cease and desist and a consent order. I'll be brutally honest with you. I don't know how the hell it hasn't happened.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at. And
The
so-
regulation in the public water drinking laws in Massachusetts, there's to be no beaver or muskrat dams within 300 feet of that well.
And this is 35.
We have standing water within 35
Right.
feet. I estimate the lodge to be within like 90.
Let me ask you this. The town of Millville is essentially the landlord of this building. Aren't they required to provide safe drinking water like any other?
Well, the town of Millville is ostensibly the owner of the system, and as the owner of a public water system, there's a nominal statutory obligation and requirement to provide water to meet a certain drinking water standard. Yeah, so in that respect, yes. Again, I'm not an attorney, I'm an engineer, but there's a nominal requirement to do that because the school is required to have, it meets the criteria to be a public water system. If you're a public water system, you have, volumes of rules and regulations to conform with, okay? And water quality is obviously one of them, okay? And Mass DEP has the legal authority to step in, and as I've said, I don't know how they haven't, okay? They've been very aggressive on some other things. I don't know why they're leaving this one lying fallow like
They
that.
must
I
know
don't
we're not drinking the water.
But-
They must.
They do know. It
They
shouldn't
must
matter.
know.
So that directive, I would really like to change, because we put a lot of work into this, and also, from a budget standpoint, I think that we have to do what's right, we have to, if whatever, to some extent, whatever it costs to make this water right. I don't think that this should be managed in a way that, we're worried about.
Can I make a suggestion? We should put a complaint in with the Board of Health and the building inspector in the town of Millville. Get
Well,
the
the Board of Health.
paperwork going.
They have it.
They have to respond to it. They can't ignore it.
The response I got was, we're comfortable with the plan. I did call the Board of Health, and I've spoken with Mass DEP.
Then we can, yeah, we have to go above their head.
Yeah.
If I
I
may.
just don't want you to think I haven't done that.
If I may, Madam Chairman, the complex doesn't get a bill for water.
Correct.
Does the high school or the,
Yes, we do pay the water
Okay,
bill
yeah,
because the
alright.
district's on the
I
second.
just, iron and manganese is, in this area is very common. You know, I'm very, very, very frustrated that the town did not recognize the $4,500 bill. Meanwhile, next door, over here in this town, the people of Blackstone are paying $8.5 million for a water filtration plant. We're giving the water to the Kennedy School, and we recognize, I'm very familiar with how this works. I was very involved in our well 8 and well 9, the DEP regulations. And we acted on them rather swiftly, because they give you a time period of a work in progress, a time to, to get a plan together and proceed. And I would be willing to bet that the town of Blackstone is paying well over $4,500 a week to daily maintain the levels of iron, manganese, and everything else on a daily basis that supplies the schools in the town of Blackstone. And I'm tremendously disappointed that the school district had to pay $4,500 for water to be delivered to the school, for the school to run. And I'm not going to go with the Blackstone kids. It's all the kids in the district are paying the price, and the families. Something has to be done to put. I mean, the DEP must be being very patient on this matter, but this is not the last I'm going to speak about this. I assure you, and this has to be addressed. And the bedrock up there, it's all around Blackstone. It's the same. It's the same. This has been an issue for at least the 20 years that you've been involved, and it's been an issue before that. And I know back about 20 years ago, there was $600,000 put aside in the town of Millville to address this, which didn't address it. And there's some frustrated residents that have reached out to me in the last week that worked on it back then. And no, I really appreciate your frustration in this matter, and I am the disregard for the safe drinking water with 400 students and, all the personnel up there, and they have a responsibility. It is a public water supply. It's a water supply that is put in no different than the town of Blackstone putting in a well, the town of Millville put in a well for clean, safe drinking water for the students of that public building. And it needs to be addressed, or other action needs to be taken where the building is not used until that water source is rectified. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Anyone else for?
Erin, I have a question.
Yes.
When Mass DEP gave their initiative, and because Millville is electing not to follow that, can Mass DEP follow up with fines until Millville follows their orders?
In the regulatory process, there is a range of responses, regulatory, responses that can occur at up to and including fines, okay? Typically, the threat of a fine will bring the parties to the negotiating table where they'll work out a consent order. If something blatant that needs to be corrected hasn't been corrected, either in a timely way or for whatever other reason. Yeah, so the state of Massachusetts, or the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, has all the authority in the world. Now, I will tell you that I've been involved in a few of the meetings, but not all of them, that one of the recommendations that came from Mass DEP to Millville was, well, why don't you build a connection either to Blackstone or to Uxbridge, and run a water line. And obviously there's a significant capital cost associated with that. I mean, the discussion starts probably in the single-digit millions and go from there. So that's a significant undertaking that wouldn't happen in 6 months. You're talking multiple years to get something like that accomplished. I mean, that discussion actually has been thrown out there by some of the senior officials in the drinking water section in Mass DEP Central Region. I mean, I've been in the room when they.
We also met with Congressman McGovern. I mean, there was also,
there was a big
this
has gone up to
This has
political
been a big,
food chain, yeah. But again, the simple answer to the question is yes. There are a range of regulatory and financial penalty steps that could be theoretically taken by Mass DEP.
Yeah, and I had a conversation with Representative Soda and Fatman about 4 years ago. At the end of Lincoln Street, before it turns into Millville, before you turn onto Prater Street, there is that building right there is the end of the town's water supply, which can connect. I mean, it's a heck of a run up Thayer Street.
There's a water tank right there, so I think hydraulically speaking for Blackstone system, and altitude-wise going up to Millville, there would have to be a pump.
Yeah,
Right.
you'll need a booster pump
That
station.
was the conversation, yeah.
Again, it's my suggestion would be, even though it might be somewhat daunting from a, capitalization standpoint, that's something I think that the communities ought to consider. They should at least look at it, a little more aggressively. Now, I know that Mr. Caruso did have, this goes back at least a couple of years ago, there was some level of discussion with the Board of Selectmen because he asked me for some information relative to what would be involved in constructing a pipeline, say, to either Blackstone or Uxbridge. And, I just, at a very conceptual level, said, well, here, here's steps 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, blah, blah, blah. And here's some very, very coarse, capital numbers, as far as unit costs, like, $1 million a mile and things like that stuff, but what would be involved. And I even said, listen, here's some engineering firms you can talk to. I think Tata and Howard is Uxbridge's engineer. I'm not sure who Blackstone's engineering firm is that you use.
Weston and Sampson.
Weston and Sampson. Yeah, I mean, those are two firms that could certainly take a look at it. Obviously there's a probable cost associated with that. So again, there was some level of discussion. I wasn't privy to the discussions with the Board of Selectmen, so I don't know the details of what might have been stated or not, but obviously the outcome has been, we're still here going in circles on this water system at Millville Elementary School.
So I believe the Millville Selectmen have asked if we can all come together with their other consultant, right?
yes.
But they would like us to host a meeting. So I'm going to ask you to keep your photos, your overhead shots, if that date comes up. Since you haven't met with them, so May of 2019, that was at Millville Elementary School when we met with McGovern, and
Yeah.
I was there, and there was a lot of talk about connecting to Blackstone, connecting to Millville, and it was the town administrator's first time. So it sounds to me that since 2019, you've had a lot of roadblocks for.
Well, again, I don't
taking care
want
of the
I'm not trying to
needs.
throw people under the bus, but we've been kind of put into a bit of a straitjacket. Okay, and listen, I'm a straight shooter. I'm an upfront kind
Not
of guy.
by us.
No, I'm not suggesting by the school committee. I mean, no, not at all. I'm an upfront guy. You heard me say before that the disinfection byproducts problem that you had in November of 2018 was a mistake by our then operator, okay, who, by the way, is no longer with the firm. He was a good operator, but he made a mistake. And we didn't properly adjust the chemical feed. We took responsibility, we took the immediate corrective action, resolved that problem, but, we're now in a situation where we're doing everything we possibly can, and everyone's in a really difficult position right now, because we can no matter which way we go, we can have a beneficial outcomes for certain of the water quality requirements, but then we have a negative outcome for another one, okay? And you know, you have to have a positive outcome for all of them. And that's our dilemma right now. And I am extremely concerned about going forward without resolution. I'm not trying to say the beaver dam is the cause of all the world's problems, but that beaver dam
Sure looks like the
has gotta
smoking
go.
gun.
Okay, it's got to go.
So
If
at
you want to
this
continue to use
time,
that
is there
well, that
any-
beaver dam's got to go.
Is there any plan to replace the green sand filters as we expected them to be April break?
Well, they weren't being replaced. The grandstand filters were completely refurbished and rebedded
chemical,
in
the
February.
permanganate,
All this next improvement was change the chemistry
Yeah.
from change the pre-oxidation chemistry from, let's just call it chlorine in the form of sodium hypochlorite to potassium permanganate to eliminate the disinfection byproducts problems. But one of the reasons that decision was made is because we have elevated organic material in the raw water, which isn't going away.
And we were under the impression that was happening in April.
That's right. And I'm the person who said, no, I can't do this in April because, A, we don't have enough information and we're walking ourselves, we're going to trade one problem for another problem. And I can't accept that. So I basically made the decision and I've since notified the town. You're looking at doing this in the summertime when we can at least.
Yeah, but can I interrupt you for a second, Bob? Because the issue with this, the issue with that switchover, as I'm understanding, as you're explaining it, is that's going to cause another major issue, and frankly, could be even more harmful as far as not removing the beaver dam and removing the chlorine that actually kills the bacteria that's in that water. So
That's
it all
correct.
comes back to the beaver dam, and you know, from
Right.
that perspective, and we need to get rid of it
Right, there's no path forward
without getting
Until
rid of
that.
that.
without.
Right. So
Right, no, you're absolutely right.
Right.
So if you
Okay. So
saw
that's-
about a week and a
One
half
step.
ago, I issued about a 4 or 5 page design memorandum to the town, basically saying, look, here's what we can do with permanganate, but I put a thing in there.
Yeah.
We're making the strongest recommendation, you have to get rid of that beaver dam and the beaver pond, because you've got serious implications with that. And this is true. Right now, our principal protection is the chlorination system.
Right, you can't remove that.
Okay, some work was being done on the well a couple of years ago. We did get a positive bacteria hit in the well. Now, again, we'd opened up the well, we'd done work, okay, we'd sanitized it, we still got a bacteria hit. But Mass DEP didn't come back and say, oh, you've got to sanitize the storage tank and the whole school because we have a chlorination system that protects the school. You take that chlorination system away,
Yeah, we
you're
got a big
walking
problem.
yourself
Notices
into
to
a major
families.
Yeah, we got a
problem.
big problem, yeah. That
Okay.
makes
So
sense.
while I respect that Millville would like us to host a conversation around all of this, before that can happen, something needs to happen with the beaver pond. So- Right, like that is the next step that needs to happen, yes?
Who has the authority to
Right.
to do
Mass
that?
DEP,
That's
it
a-
sounds like,
Or the town of Millville,
If they're not
because
gonna
they've
do it.
already been directed to do so.
and they're not. Yeah.
In your professional assessment, the beaver dam needs to be removed. The DEP's directive remove the beaver dam. The third-party consultant,
Our property.
who is not carrying
No, it's their property.
qualifications
But
that
we
you
listen.
have in this field, is suggesting it
We
can
have to
stay and
do-
it has got nothing to do with it.
That's essentially correct, yes,
Yeah.
which is my
It's
frustration.
baffling, it's just mind-boggling that
We're in
the
charge of
DEP
taking
directive
care of
is
the
just being
building.
ignored.
Yeah,
Or the-
It's not it's our business because
Give the
to
director
the students,
do it.
it's a bigger issue between the town and
We
the.
have.
please understand something, I am not trying to be, despite my appearance today, I am a professional engineer.
Yeah.
I've been one for over 40 years. I don't come in and make snarky comments and things like that, but I am being put in a position that's untenable, okay? And I have, as I said, in my most recent correspondence with the town, I said, look, I'm being put in a position where I'm going to have to terminate our agreements and walk away because I'm being asked to take responsibility for something that I'm telling you, point blank, is a disaster waiting to happen. and I will not be party to it. Okay, that's my position on it right now.
And
And
you
all I
are-
can do is,
yeah.
I am professionally and ethically bound to notify the town and the school district, the school committee of my position and the basis for it and why I believe I'm right, and I think I've got plenty of supporting evidence and documentation to that. And certainly the regulatory authorities agree with me. So we've got to get a resolution to this because I'm telling you point blank, you cannot move forward without dealing with that pond and that beaver dam issue. And I've got nothing against the beavers.
Not to beat a dead horse, guys, but here's a table of the TOC that we, samples that we take. So you're gonna wanna look at raw well water, TOC, and you're gonna wanna look at the corresponding dates here on the left. And you're gonna see a huge rise right around that 2018-19. And to me, that's the smoking gun.
Actually, I've got about 8 or 10 copies of that, Sean. There you go.
Yeah, huh?
Big time.
Yeah.
Sound good.
Thank you, Sean.
Yes.
So I certainly can reach back out to Mass DEP, I can reach back out to
I was
Board of
gonna say, what
Health.
can we,
I can draft a letter on behalf of the school
you.
committee that.
Asking if we can move forward with the removal of the
Yeah.
beaver dam.
We can ask.
And have
Yeah.
Scott do it.
Yeah.
Scott.
At this point, I'm going to do it. Scott and I will go out there together.
So as Scott was referencing, you'll also see in these summer months, the TOC might drop down a little bit.
but that was when it
And that's,
receded,
exactly,
right?
that's because the saturated beaver pond isn't influencing the well as it does, when it's saturated.
Just to point one thing out, and you can't see this in the TOC data because we're doing quarterly, but we also do disinfection byproducts. And last summer, we had a drought, the beaver pond, and we have photographs. The beaver pond substantially receded.
Yep.
Back to like what the normal extent of the wetland used to be. We ran disinfection, we had to do a disinfection byproducts monitoring in August. They were close to non-detectable. And the reason is because the TOC level in the well water had, that's an indication, it dropped way off because we are chlorinating just as much as always. Okay, but we went from relatively elevated disinfection byproducts to close to non-detectable. Okay, very low levels.
And just to address, Sean, that disinfectant byproduct, that chemical, that is the reason that I won't let the kids drink the water.
That's correct.
I just want to be very clear about
That's
that.
correct.
That I do not want the children or staff drinking the water. And I know we want to get past that, and I agree with that. But until we can get, because I need to make sure that 30 years from now, kids that drank that water for, 3 or 4 years aren't going to develop some type of issue that, and, after the fact, we're all saying, oh darn, like I wish, I'm not doing that. So until we can figure out, and I know you agree, but until we can figure out a solution for that, I've been asked repeatedly, not by you individuals, but to change the optics, to change my public narrative, to tell parents it's fine, stop sending the notifications through email, hard no on all those things. So until we can address that, I will not let the kids put this water in their bodies.
Our
until-
monitoring's been reduced substantially too over the past few years.
Yep.
I believe in an effort of the town to possibly save money. And when a plan is failing like that does, for an operator, it just creates a more volatile situation.
Right. So,
If I can elaborate on that just for one moment here, I know I'm sure you got other things on the agenda. There's 2 levels of monitoring you have to do as a water system operator. The first is, what are you required to do for regulatory compliance? That's mandated by the regulatory agency, in this case, Mass DEP. But then there's the monitoring you have to do to correctly and adequately operate the water treatment plant. That scope of monitoring is always substantially greater than what you need to do for baseline regulatory compliance. And I understand there's a cost associated with that, but we basically had our budget stripped way down. And so when you can't do as effective monitoring, it's harder to keep control of the system. To be really honest with you, we got to the beginning of this year, and I directed Sean and my other compliance staff members, I said, I'm done with this, we're going to do all the monitoring that we need to do. And because we need to. And that's what has enabled us to have the database now to get a better handle on some of the issues and you know, and how to go forward, you know, if we can make this change, this chemistry change or not. And at one point, I was directed to even cut back on the field test kits that we were using.
And that's coming from the Millville Selectmen?
No, that's coming from their consultant. That's coming from the third-party consultant who,
So in your opinion, is that Board of Selectmen even aware that you're being
I have
cut
no
back
idea,
that way?
because I haven't been requested to be in front of the selectmen in several years, okay? And again, if, you know, my position is, we'll do our best job we can. I'll be as professional as possible. If the town wants to have another consultant making the representations in front of the Board of Selectmen, that's their prerogative, okay? But as I said, I've been put into a position where it's an untenable position I've been put in right now, and I will not accept it.
Okay. Well, we sincerely appreciate the full run-through. I think we're
appreciate your
all
time.
at least on the same page with it now.
I will be more than happy to, now, I have Mr. DeFalco's, I have, you know, I've been communicating with him by email. If anyone else wants to provide me your email address, I mean, you know, you've asked for a lot of information on the wells and what our contract costs are. I'll be more than happy to provide you the information, you know, PDFs of the original documentation, and I'll be glad to email it to you. Just provide, you know, I can either do it through.
If you want to send everything to me, I can send it all to the committee.
Yeah, that's fine.
It'll make it
Whatever's
easier.
the most easiest, most convenient way.
Yeah.
Glad to do it.
Are you
And if
okay with
anybody
that?
has any questions, we try to be as open and transparent as possible, so please don't hesitate to communicate with us. I'm more than happy to respond.
You've been great to work with, Bob. I appreciate it.
I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My next presentation will be in PowerPoint.
So we're going to go backwards to our capital stabilization fund. Lynn is here. So we did put this item on the town warrants. Just gonna go.
Hi, Lynn.
Hi.
Sorry about that wait.
No, I'm thinking maybe they build a new school.
We're working on it. That's the other project we're working on,
Another
as you know.
project, isn't it?
Thanks for being here.
Oh, my pleasure. So we're back to talking about the capital stabilization fund. Most of you were at the meeting. Hey, Matt. I
how are
had
you?
dinner with you Tuesday night.
we did, yes,
You're sitting
absolutely.
right behind me. A couple months ago, as you recall, with the finance directors and board of selectmen, we started just talking about capital stabilization fund for regional school districts. So I'll kind of give the folks that weren't there a little bit of a background. As you know, most cities, towns, special districts have always had these stabilization funds, which the rating agencies consider as part of reserves. Regional school districts, up until recently, I'll say, didn't have that ability. And basically, your stabilization fund was what we would term your E&D. Okay, and as we all know, E&D is capped by the statute that you can't exceed 5%. When you look in the rating agency world, when they look at, and of course they all look at reserves, right, as a percentage of your expenditures. In Massachusetts, we're kind of unique because we can never get over this 5%. And they looked the other way for a long time, knowing, oh, well, that's just the way they operate. But we've seen more and more of these regional school districts develop and accept the stabilization funds for various reasons. First of all, they came about because there were capital projects, small capital projects that would happen throughout the year after the budgets had been set. And the only other recourse was to go back and maybe do a special town meetings and see if it gets approved. So we saw a lot of these regional school districts kind of, accept, and the member towns accept that they establish these stabilization funds. and that they fund them for maybe this pay-as-you-go as things come up. Over the past couple of years, with the school building situation as it is, a lot of the towns and cities and districts were putting money aside to offset the cost of a feasibility study. And I believe that's where we are thinking of going with the district as far as we get on this new pathway towards the school construction project. So the mechanics of the fund is that the school committee would vote to establish it. A majority of the school committee members need to take a vote to establish the fund. It then goes to the member towns. Blackstone and Millville would have to bring it to town meeting and approve the establishment. So assume that gets done, the funding then from the member towns would act like your capital assessment would, okay? And the statute states that you cannot assess 5% over the previous year's assessment, okay? So you have a cap there, but it would have to be voted to establish it by a majority. The district maintains it. The district treasurer is the custodian of those funds. Any interest earned on the fund stays with the fund. And basically, so you would establish whatever that dollar amount is that you build into that capital assessment and to start funding the fund. Obviously, you can't put more into the fund throughout the year than what you've already budgeted for. However, you can take from E&D and fund that as well. So there's two revenue sources that you have to fund that.
So we did vote to establish the fund, and we have sent.
Is it on the member towns?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
we're only asking for it to be funded from a transfer from E&D, not a percentage from the towns at this time. Right? That's the way
That
we
is
worded
correct,
it.
yep. And we outlined specifically for feasibility
So we're
study.
essentially looking for their approval to create the account, but we're going to, so I guess that would be my question to you is if,
So how much would, I mean, I'm just thinking, timing-wise, as we get into this feasibility study, and I'll give you a little background about how the feasibility works and some of those constraints. The feasibility, since it's a study, the state statute only allows you to finance it for up to 5 years. Okay, so you could issue, short-term notes, and this is basically how it's done,
Right.
okay? You issue the short-term notes until, you get your schematic design, you get your specs done, and you're ready to go to the next process for construction. If construction does not pass, then you are stuck financing that feasibility study.
Yep.
And if you've had notes out for 2 years, then you've got to pay it back over 3 years. And that can be a pretty hefty nut when we're talking maybe $1 million, $1.5 million in feasibility study. So the stabilization fund kind of helps soften that a little bit. And in some cases, there's some districts that have funded their full feasibility study with the capital stabilization fund.
Lynn, to pass the feasibility study, is it just a simple majority, or is it a?
Two-thirds.
Two-thirds.
It's a borrowing, so
Okay.
it would be a
So
two-thirds
it is
vote.
two-thirds?
Yep.
All right.
Yes.
I just wanted to double check that.
Right, even
That's what I
though,
thought, but-
even though we're using our own funding, it's still a
It's still a
two-thirds
two-thirds.
vote.
Yes.
well,
Yes.
Well,
Not
it would be a two-thirds vote from the towns because it's a borrowing,
Right.
but they're approving yes or no to the project, obviously.
But just for the stabilization account itself,
So for the stabilization, it's a majority vote,
Right.
okay, to establish it.
Right.
All right? It's two-thirds vote
to fund it.
to take out money for expenditure purposes. You have to have a two-thirds vote of the
Right.
school committee.
So majority to open the
Majority in,
feasibility.
two-thirds out.
Okay,
Okay.
gotcha.
Does that mean we
That's on
need,
the stabilization fund, not the feasibility vote
The
itself.
feasibility vote itself is a two-thirds vote.
Correct.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because it's a borrowing.
Yeah.
does that mean we need two articles? One to establish stabilization, and then one to fund it?
No, because what you would be doing is you would be putting an assessment, okay, into your capital assessment. So when you assess the towns, you send them out the letter for operating in capital.
Yep.
In that capital would be that number that you're putting into the stabilization fund.
If we're assessing the towns and making it align in our budget,
It's a
which we're
budget,
not.
it's a budget, yeah.
Yeah, we're not, right? So for us, we have one warrant article that is looking for the towns to approve the school committee to open a capital stabilization fund, moving $500,000 from E&D into that
Okay.
fund for the purposes of funding a feasibility
So
study.
then it would come back to us. We have to have a
Does that make
two-thirds
sense?
vote to move
Yeah,
the
no, it does.
money.
So
Yeah, that's how we
so
do
you're just not taking the route that you're going to build revenue from the capital assessment to a town. So it's not going to be assessment, it's going to be E&D.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then that
So
becomes
just
a
one
vote.
revenue
Once
source
the
you're gonna use,
account
okay.
is established, we vote to move the money.
Two-thirds, yep,
Two-thirds.
for expenditures.
Yep.
And so on an annual basis, you have to provide to the member towns a list of the expenditures. And so all those balances have to be reported to them, what the fund balance is, what the expenditures were for that year.
Okay.
So it sounds like we're right
It
where
sounds
we
like you're
need to
ahead than
be
what I thought you were,
with this.
yeah.
But we had
We'd like to hear that,
deadlines.
Lynn.
Huh?
We like to hear that.
Yeah, that you're ahead of me, yes. I was
We had
gonna catch
deadlines
up.
to get
That's
on
not
the
usually the
warrant.
That's how we
case.
try to operate.
Any questions about the process or? It's
Anything
good to
else?
hear that we're on track.
I'm sorry you had to wait for the.
Well, now you're going to humor me and ask me some questions. An hour and a half ride home.
We appreciate you.
So,
very much.
yep, that's, yeah, anytime you want to back. And so when are you anticipating, if I can ask, your timeline for the feasibility for?
We're hoping, the clock for us starts ticking in June
Yes,
1st
yeah.
for MSBA, but we're hoping in November,
November would be a special
town meeting.
Oh, fantastic.
So we've done a lot of work
I know
so
you
far.
have, yep, I know
We've
you
got
have.
A good 6 months ahead of us, which is good. Hopefully get it to the finish line.
Perfect. It's great to see you guys again.
Thanks, Lynn.
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
good to see you again.
We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Take care.
All right, and then to move things out of order a little more, just to get to our group back here that's patiently waiting through all the water talk. We're going to move to the report of the superintendent for his items.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Tonight, we have an update, and as it reads on our slide deck, a final presentation, we hope, from our Social Studies Curriculum Committee. If you want to join us up front, very grateful and appreciative of your time, your patience, but frankly, most importantly, all the work that all of you and the rest of our staff have put into this. I just want to share with those tuning in at home, we started 5 years ago, and I just want to highlight this very briefly. You may recall, with a fairly candid report from Johns Hopkins. Through a grant we had written, we asked them to come in and audit the school district, specifically from the written, taught, and learned curriculum. And so they spent time looking over all kinds of documents. They read our Department of Education review. They met with our staff. They went to classrooms. They surveyed the teachers. They looked at the student work. And they said, you all have a big problem here. Your teachers don't have curriculum, other than math at the time. And the math was questionable in terms of its implementation. In other words, whether they were using it. Teachers are spending an inordinate amount of time finding stuff, looking for stuff to do, to put in front of children. And so the school committee and the district made a huge commitment to start a curriculum revision and renewal cycle. The reason I'm mentioning that is because tonight marks the last of the core English, Math, Science, Social Studies core review and renewal parts of our cycle. So we've been through this process now four times. This is our fourth time. And I'm incredibly grateful to our school committee because year after year after year, they have prioritized teaching and learning. And it has been done through very clear actions around the budgeting of our school district's operations, specifically as it relates to our curriculum. The curriculum is the cornerstone of what we do. It is the what in our strategic plan or Blueprint 2.0. I will say very pointedly, there is not a superintendent anywhere in our area who can say that their school committee has supported the work in teaching and learning like the one in BMR. So that is a huge testament to all of you. You have taken the research, you've understood very clearly that teachers and students need to have the materials in front of them so that the teachers can act on them and spend the time adapting them for the kids, not searching teachers pay teachers. That is not a good use of their time. So I'm incredibly grateful as the lead teacher of the district, so to speak, and one that, other than safety, prioritizes teaching and learning as the top piece of the work that we do. And so as we are going to hear the kind of the final stages of our social studies work. And I will also share that you may remember some of our returning members, Corey Hamner, who was a consultant that we were working with from ANET, Achievement Network, who was facilitating the work. ANET has done research articles on BMR that they have published and sent out to districts across, literally coast to coast, about our little BMR and how we're doing our teaching and learning, our curriculum work here. And just as recent as Corey reached out last week asking when I could jump on a call, she wants to hear an update on all the work that we're doing. We are very blessed now that we have a lead coach. And so Mary picked up the ball right where Corey left it and was able to continue the work. And I know, Kate, you've served on a few of these curriculum committees, which is great. Patrick, we're super glad that as you're new to us, wanted to jump on this. And Jeff, I know you're hiding back there, but I can see you still, have been very involved in other curriculum renew and review processes in the past. So I don't mean to be long-winded about it, but I have to take a moment to celebrate this because this is a huge piece. And a lot of school districts do not get this right. They don't get it right. Instead, you'll hear expressions like, oh, we let teachers grow their own or build their own, and you end up with every third grade getting a different thing. And it's the luck of the draw of the teacher you get. True or false, right? And so we're at a point now where they have worked tirelessly over the past 5 years to align our curriculum, to study the research, to pilot materials, resources, and to go to the next step, which is our social study, our elementary teachers specifically have been through literacy training, math training, science training, and now social studies training. So we have put our teachers through a tremendous amount of adaptation as it relates to the work that they're doing. And our great staff like Kate are still sitting here doing the work. She hasn't run. So again, I don't need to be long-winded about it, but I need to give this its airtime because this is actually really significant. And the community can wait for next year. We'll be reviewing science again. So this job in terms of the curriculum review and renewal does not stop. If you're doing it right, it continues so that our students have the best in front of them. So with that, Mary.
I would just like to say, also on behalf of the Social Studies Committee, it has really been my honor to work with them. They worked so hard. We met every week. We've been doing this since October. And there's, this is only a piece of the committee. Everybody's been working really, really hard. So our first slide, just to recap, we started this in October.
Mary, we have never gotten through one of your slide decks without this issue.
I even gave somebody else a clicker.
I just hit the forward button. We're good.
So just that we had started this in October, what did we want this to look like? What did we want it to sound like? What did we want? We wanted really good curriculum. So what we discussed were what were going to be the key components of a high-quality social studies curriculum. So we came up with a checklist. We created this, and I won't read all of it because you have it in front of you. But just some of the things that we wanted it to be up to date, which was an issue with some of our curriculum that we had, especially the third grade. And primary sources, we wanted it to have have it to be something that you could use across the curriculum, especially for the elementary schools, that you could integrate a lot of literacy-based things that were already using. And that it was compatible with Clever, which would help the teachers immensely. That it was, we had an ELL teacher that was on the committee that made sure that all of the curriculum was aligned with what she needed with the ELL students. And Kate's actually also certified special ed, so she looked at it through that lens as well. So then we narrowed it down to 3 different curriculums per school. So the elementary schools both elementary schools had 3 curriculums that they were looking at. High school, I think, actually had 4, and the middle school had 3 as well. And so we had the principals look at it, we had other teachers, not just on the committee, look at it. Teachers brought it back to their PLCs. We had students weigh in on which ones that they really liked and why. And so at the end of probably the middle of March, we narrowed it down to what we decided, we voted. And so the one that we had we decided to go with for elementary school, for both elementary schools, was TCI, which is Teacher Created Instruction. It's a smaller publishing company. It's been around for a very long time. They specialize in social studies and have branched out now into science. And then McGraw-Hill in the high school went with TCI as well. But the middle school felt that McGraw-Hill really aligned better with theirs, and I'm going to let the teachers explain why. We also went with, if you just go to the next slide, because and I'm going to let Kate start this, but I'll just give you a little bit. There's a very small publishing company too, Gibbs Smith Education, because they focus on in 3rd grade Massachusetts. There's no curriculums, like big curriculum companies that do that. So this is like a supplement for grade 3.
So as Mary was saying, and hello, good evening, I'm Kate Dubois. I'm a 3rd grade teacher here in the district, and 3rd grade does teach Massachusetts history and geography and economics to their students, and none of these publishing companies that we looked at were geared specifically to Massachusetts, because they're meant to, they're trying to sell their products to the country, to all the schools across the country. They do have components, of course, that are compatible, and TCI did have that for us. But we have in 3rd grade, we do have a textbook right now. It's called Massachusetts Our Home, and it's by that publisher that Mary shared with you. And we love it as staff members, and our students love it. They do get really excited about the material and the content in that social studies book, but it's very outdated. It's we have version 1 of it. We have the first one, and they're now up to the 3rd edition. It's been 20 years since the books that we currently have on our shelves in our classroom were purchased, and we have no supplemental material. In the 20 years since we first received those books, they've come up with ELL components. We don't even have teachers' manuals. We don't have assessment. So all of those, even though we have textbooks, we are still creating our own assessments and projects and things for the kids. So when we saw that there was this 3rd edition available, we did, kind of put this in our request, and we're very pleased that it's available, and hopefully you will agree that it is something that we can have for our students. But in addition, all of the elementary, and as Mary said, this came from speaking with our administrators, with all of the staff, special ed staff, regular education staff, paraprofessionals, the students, what were we looking for our elementary students? And again, we took into consideration our portrait of a graduate, because it starts way down in preschool. And so we were looking for a curriculum that was going to directly connect to those 5 pillars. And TCI, we found, was going to do that for us, particularly in the areas of vocabulary. Again, all of these areas, and I won't read them all, I know you have them as a slide, but these areas we also identified because we see them as we look at data from one year to the next, that they are areas of need for the kids. Like vocabulary, we want to expand the breadth of our students' vocabulary. This program has a lot of really rich vocabulary, and not just that the kids are exposed to it, but there are a lot of opportunities for them to use that vocabulary in various ways. So we were really excited about those vocabulary options, as well as the integration of primary sources and the project-based learning opportunities for the kids. Because again, a lot of the materials we currently were using didn't have those components built into them. The readability levels, as Mary said, I also tried to look at it through the lens of a special educator and a student. And the readability levels were such that we would be able to present all of the students in our class with maybe minor tweaks and adaptations as necessary, and they would be able to access the material. So we were really pleased by what we saw as an elementary staff in the teachers' curriculum instruction program.
Great. So hi, I'm Patrick Rosendale. I teach 7th grade world history, and I know everyone was waiting to see what tie I was going to wear tonight, so this is a presidential tie. I will do my best not to do any sort of presidential puns. I'll leave that thinking to Mr. Lincoln, and hopefully no one Nixons on anything I say. So anyways, so the middle school decided to go with McGraw-Hill, and one of the things when we were starting this process, in 6th and 7th grade, definitely our standards dictate that it's all about world history. In 8th grade, it's civics. So one of the things that we kept coming back to is what is that connecting piece for from 6th and 7th grade all the way up into 8th grade for civics. And so while looking at Savvis, TCI, and of course McGraw-Hill, the one thing that we always kept coming back to was McGraw-Hill has already aligned their curriculum to our state standards. And that is something that many educators in our building were extremely, when we asked for feedback, they kept saying, those standards are already there. Like everything is right there. Everything when it comes to resources for veteran teachers and even to newer teachers, they have everything from writing prompts, just the entire presentation. And we also did student feedback. And when we polled the students when looking at the TCI textbook and the McGraw-Hill textbook, every single time they preferred the McGraw-Hill. And a lot of it was through the text, a lot of it was through the readability. The thing that they kept saying in the feedback, and the thing that we kept seeing when we were kind of doing many of the our lessons and activities, was the interactive maps. And the interactive maps, sometimes when you teach geography, sometimes maps can be very static. Put something up and everyone looks at it, it's like, okay, point to where the capital it is. The maps through McGraw-Hill are interactive. The students can actually touch them, not on the screen, but they can actually scroll in, they can zoom back, they can write on the maps. The fact that these are also cross-curricular, they can see a physical map, they can see a political map. The fact that I had students that were trying to calculate vacations in Europe, so if you have students that are already doing that, apologize, but they're starting to figure out, oh, I can get from Barcelona to here in this amount. The fact without any prompting, they're starting to use cross-curricular, that was another thing that was kind of, for us, a huge light, something that kept popping up as we kept coming back and debriefing. When it came to the civics piece of it all, the vocabulary, the verbiage that McGraw-Hill was using and a lot of the world history connects, it's like a nice feeder into what Kathy Finnegan was doing in civics. So again, we kept coming back to this, how do we connect these pieces? How do we go around the world and then come back into civics? And that's why for us, McGraw-Hill hit all of those areas. And in general, covering all the standards is something that is crucial. While other curriculums are in the process of doing so, McGraw-Hill is already ahead of the game. And that's why McGraw-Hill for us stood out in all of the surveys and doing the lessons and activities through this crew.
All right, for the high school, we chose TCI. TCI is actually one of the, along with some of the others, but TCI is one that stood out because it is already approved by the Massachusetts Department of Education. So they are also aligned with the Massachusetts standards. What's funny is that TCI has been around for, probably 25 years or so. The initial...
1996.
96, okay.
Yeah.
Our initial use of TCI is actually in ancient binders in which we are able to look at this curriculum and actually do printouts and Xeroxes or mimeographs for us who've been around long enough. So we are familiar with TCI. What's great about it is project-based, it is interactive with students, it is also promoting critical thinking. So a couple of examples of things that our students have gone through that I've witnessed and also participated in helping. One of the things that they had to do is they actually went through a Ellis Island line in which they were given specific cards, and they actually had to come through and try and get themselves into America. And then they had a debrief after the fact of why certain people who either had a limp or a cough or lied or had prison time somewhere else or whatever the case may be, were either stamped that they could go through or they were thrown into the detention center. So I had the joy of being the final say of them giving the stamps or going no. So that was a lot of fun. But then it was the discussions that occurred afterwards that were really rich. They're about critical thinking, how did you feel, things along that line. TCI was overwhelmingly the favorite of students. They felt that it was easy to use, it was interactive, it promoted collaboration, a portrait of a graduate pillar along with critical thinking among others. So due to that and the fact that one of the things that we have talked about as well, and as have others, how much screen time is too much screen time. So the beauty of TCI is you can do a lot of these activities by just printing them out and posting them. So one of the popular ones is they'll print placards and they'll put them around the room for a gallery walk. It promotes the kids to get up, to collaborate. The teachers can interact with them as they're collaborating. So that's the beauty of it as well, is that you don't always have to be on the screen. They do have that interactive notebook that students can obviously do assessments, notebooks, textbooks, everything online, but a lot of the big activities can be done offline, which is a plus as well. So that was where that decision kind of came from.
And the History Alive part, if I could jump into that, has been, so that has fed down, as we are hearing, also to the elementary level, because I actually taught that in Worcester in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. And that lessons and activities were out of this world as far as reenacting the Revolutionary War, the start of the Revolutionary War. I mean, I remember marching my kids down to a park gosh, it's slipping my mind now, the name of the park, and we literally were reenacting, yeah.
The group of people that they have at TCI are all kind of history teacher, former
Yes.
history teachers,
Yeah.
and they really do a good job of figuring out what is it that folks need to know and how can we do it beyond on April in 1775, they came across, they experience, and that's, part of their brand is also history alive, and they bring it alive in the classroom. So that's, again, why we kind of said this is a really good choice.
So this is just where the orders are. So this is how many students will be getting that we have at JFK AFM next year, the middle school, the high school, and how many teacher additions of things that we needed.
And so, Mary, those are reflected in the orders?
They are,
in the packet.
yes, they're all in the packet that you got.
So the next steps that we have are kind of finalizing this will be to set up professional development for teachers to attend in not only June but also in August. So one of the things that we're planning on doing is myself and Carol Conti will be going down to the elementary school to help them with the TCI and navigating the platform and so on. So the high school has, and not that the elementary has not, but the high school has implemented TCI kind of already. And we're going to kind of go down and help not only with the implementation of TCI, but also to look at the Massachusetts standards and help to make sure that everything is aligned. And we're going to kind of come up with a must-do, can-do list, meaning these are the items that we feel that you must do, and these are the ones that you can do, but if you do these core pieces of curriculum, not only will the kids be able to meet the standards, but it'll also help them as they're moving up vertically.
So in order to do that, we will be continuing to work as a committee during the summertime as well, and aligning from K to 12 what needs to be done and what should be aligned, that's going to look like, so that in August we can have more professional development, and also in October when we have PD Day, that we can do more professional development to really get the ball rolling. The other piece to that too will be the TCI and McGraw-Hill are also available to us during that time.
High school will also be working on that in PLCs to make sure that everyone's
Yes.
all set with the platform. And just to revisit to elementary to make sure it's clear, the history teachers, all they do is history. So they've been in this. The elementary has a lot more responsibility, so that's the only reason that we're going to go down and assist. I'm sure they can do it on their own.
But we're very grateful.
You heard it here first.
We're doing it all day long. They have way more time and responsibilities, so we are happy to go down and assist
Jeff
them.
Kern just went on the record saying the elementary teachers have way more to do.
Amen.
Remember.
That's why I'm in secondary.
This
Never
was
hear a secondary teacher say that.
This was actually one of the benefits of this committee, was that at the beginning of this, we did align it, and so where certain things were being taught in the first grade, oh wow, we teach this in the 10th grade, and just moving, and that was where this idea came from, and Kate, has said during the committee, maybe we need to, look at like this big curriculum and see, let's look what's really important to teach, and who better to ask but the experts.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where that idea came from. Any questions for our social studies committee? I'm just more curious, though, in the student bundle for TCI, are there textbooks included in that?
Yes.
Or is it
Yeah, so
all
what
digital?
so what happened, yeah, they have consumables for elementary school. The high school doesn't have a consumable.
So it's all digital for high school?
No, we did order class sets of books as well, so there'll be like one class set for world history, not like for each student.
Okay.
So, but in the way the bundles worked, that is included in the bundles, and then we had to order extra digitals to meet the population of students that we had.
Okay.
But the elementary school does have it's like if you think about our math workbooks, it's
Yeah.
about this thick, and it's called the Social Studies Journal. It's their interactive journal, and it is a workbook. In addition, there's like a magazine. It's almost like a graphic novel. So there are supplemental stories and plays and readers theater and things like that for the kids to access. But that is available for elementary students. And again, when we looked at that, we thought that was important because we know, again, like screen time, how much is too much time,
Yes.
and we need to put them on. They need to become very proficient at using their devices, but at the same time, they're still young. They need to feel things in their hands and to engage in that. And that was part of like one of the reasons we picked TCI, was as we went through that consumable piece, that interactive, that journal, that text to picture ratio was really great. Like we've looked at other programs where it was mostly it was very wordy. and little kids can't deal with very wordy. So it's a really nice ratio of, oh, here's some text and here are pictures, and they were real pictures. They weren't just like drawn sketches and things. They were really vibrant pictures for
Right.
the kids.
And they also gave them enough room to write.
Yes.
Which
Nice big
some of them
lines.
didn't, but TCI gave them a lot. Especially Millville had said that that was really important to them, that they gave the kids enough room to write. The third grade set, we're getting 125 textbooks, and then. So those will be consumables. Those are. Yeah.
The Gibson Smith education.
Oh, those, yes.
Yes.
I'm sorry, yes.
Our home.
Yes.
Yes, those are
books.
hardcover textbooks.
Yeah, so that's that order is that will be like just a 1 year, like that's.
Right, then
it.
they're ours.
Right.
And the digital for the, that was free, just because we bought the books. So, and then the teachers get the 5-year digital for free as well.
So the overall, like the rest of our curriculum purchases, it's a 6-year.
6 years.
It's a 6-year purchase program, so we're good for 6 years for social studies this year, once we cover the cost for this year.
It looks exciting.
Yeah, so the cost actually, it's interesting because the cost for history, initially I was very concerned. You might remember the literacy and the math programs were upwards over 200,000. We were looking around 150, and through Mary's negotiating, we ended up landing around 177. But initially it was closer to
167.
167. It was closer to 200. So Mary went back and renegotiated some of the rates and was able to get that down some more. So this would be fully outfitting K to 12 for 6 years for 167,000, which is actually one of the cheaper, less expensive we've had to spend the past few years on curriculum. And again, it's good for 6 years.
Any other questions? So I'm looking for a motion to approve the social studies curriculum as presented, which is TCI for elementary and high school and McGraw-Hill for middle school.
So moved.
Motion made by Chuck, is there a second? Second by Kerry. Any other questions for our power group here? Or, okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That's unanimous. On to
Thank you.
the purchase.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice work, everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah, is that okay?
Yeah.
Then I can finish my report. The next item under my report is an update on pre-K. So we'll shift gears into that, and Jill is going to give everybody a brief update on where we are with our preschool programming. It's also very exciting.
So I'm wondering if
I'm gonna
Jesse.
grab that.
Okay.
I'm gonna grab that.
You
You
mind
got
to
it,
be my
Denise?
clicker?
Okay.
Someone can be my clicker.
Denise will.
Yes.
Rolling.
Oh, I'm going to put you in charge of it.
Oh, thank you.
I don't like to multitask. So I wanted to give everyone an update on our preschool, and not just about numbers, but some of the things that they're actually doing in preschool. We spend a lot of time presenting how our students are doing on STAR assessment, how our students are doing on MCAS, the curriculum we're doing. But I think it's important that we also hear about our youngest, our littlest learners out in preschool. So I put a little presentation together for you, just to kind of introduce you to some of the new things that we're doing in preschool. Is it working?
Got it.
Perfect.
Sorry, my apologies.
So in general, this year, for this school year, we had 98 students who are enrolled in our preschool. Our preschools are divided into we have 4 teachers in preschool. 3 of them are called integrated program. And up there, I actually put the regulations of what makes it more integrated. We have regular ed students, so students without disabilities, and then students with disabilities. In our model, you'll see up there, you can have a class of 20 with a teacher and they call it an aide, are paraprofessionals with no more than 5 students with disabilities, but our model right now, we use 15 students with no more than 6 or 7 students with disabilities with a teacher and a paraprofessional. So like I said, our current year enrollment this year is 98. Students with disabilities is at 33, and students without disabilities is at 65. Next year's enrollment, as of right now, because we just put out, who's interested in our preschool program, our current enrollment right now is at 76, but if you notice, right now, our students without disabilities, it's still at the 65. I do anticipate normally when we still have openings, we kind of continue to reach out to the community. It kind of grows throughout the year, because in order to come into preschool, you have to be 3. And if we have room, a lot of schools will say, okay, when September starts and you're 3, that's it, there's no more enrollment. But if we have room and we have kiddos that turn 3, in the year, we do allow them to come to preschool. So right now, we have 65 families who are interested, and we do have 11 with disabilities. A lot of our other students are saying, well, what happened to the other kiddos? They've moved on to kindergarten. So this is what we're anticipating for numbers right now for next year.
Do you have anticipated numbers coming in from early intervention?
We
Is that
don't.
in
So
your-
what
okay.
happens is early intervention usually lets us know when they're about 2.5. We do have our team chair at Millville who has a good connection with them. We always try to ask, but we never know.
So we really don't know that number. for the-
Right, so that's why it starts at 11, but that's going to grow throughout the year.
Okay.
Yeah.
And-
And we also have parent referrals too. Not all of our kiddos come through preschool through EI. We do have parents that make referral.
So no waiting list? Gone are the days
We did
of
not,
no
no,
waiting
we did
lists?
not have to do we did have a date set. If we had the waiting list, had to do a lottery, but no, we're able to put all our kids in. Remember, a few years ago, we increased our preschool because we were having that issue. We only had 2 teachers and a self-contained. This year, we have 3 integrated teachers and 1 self-contained.
So would it be okay to say we are actively accepting?
We are. So we still have room, and what we do is, once all of these families will get their enrollment papers, some change their minds, some want to change their days, we always continue to reach out to the community saying, we're still welcoming kiddos in. And we do that throughout the year, too. We don't just close in September. Okay. And the next one just gives you an idea. So for all of our students without disabilities, considered role models, we have half-day program. We did investigate a full-day program in the past, but the parents who were interested, plus the fact that it did take other spots away from, for students who wanted to come in. We're sticking with our half-days, but we continue to offer a lot of flexibility. So we have morning sessions. You can see there we have 3 integrated classrooms in the morning, 3 in the afternoon, but we offer families if you want to send your child 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, or 5 days. So we are still giving those options. And students with IEPs, the times that they're in school, it all based on their needs and with their disabilities. And if you also look up there, we also have substantially separate classrooms, one in the AM, one in the PM. So remember I mentioned to you before in an earlier slide that if it's integrated, you have so many role models, students without disabilities and students with. This is a classroom, the majority of the students are on IEPs, and they really need some significant intervention and services. But with that, that teacher that we had added, we were able to add more sections to our preschool. So the exciting news in preschool, again, and we talk about all the time, all the programs like we heard tonight about social studies. We've been working very hard over the last couple of years to make sure that our preschoolers have the programs they need. Because again, same thing with our preschool teachers. If we don't have things for them, what they're doing is all of their time is spent trying to find things rather than the planning and the implementation of programs. So in our preschool, I'm very happy to say that we have a literacy program that is called World of Wonders, which in our elementary school, the program is Wonders. So this is the preschool version of it. And we also have, actually, that should say Expressions. That's an error. It's Math Expressions. The current program they're using, Math, at the elementary school didn't have a pre-K version, but we took in some different types of programs, and we had the preschool teachers read look through them, look at all the materials. We got some free samples, and they decided to go with the Math Essentials. So this is the first year of our Math Expressions in the preschool classroom. So World of Wonders, it's definitely that early learning. Remember, in preschool, that's the foundation. That's where it's all starting. So it's a literacy program that focuses on, building those early literacy skills, but it also has it branches out into the other areas. So it branches out a little bit into math, a little bit into science, social studies, music, as well as the social emotional development. And it does do some social skills, community, things like that. So again, it's a structured program. And by structured, I mean, if you look at the next slide, I just gave you a little idea of what the scope and sequence looks like. So you'll see it's divided. I know that might be kind of a little hard to read, but it talks about things like the alphabet time. If you can't see that, one of the examples would be they work on phonemic awareness. So they're blending syllables and sounds. They're learning their letters. They're learning their sounds. They're breaking apart syllables. They're learning about rhyming. So it's very systematic. It also gets into the books, and you're going to see a picture of some of our kiddos. But besides the big books that the teachers use, they have smaller books. So I had asked the teachers, and I said, listen, send me a few pictures of your kiddos. They sent me tons of pictures, so I had to try to whittle it down for you because they're very proud of the work. So for example, here, they may have, you see that says Three Little Pigs Retell. So we're not just reading to kids, they're pulling out the main idea, they're retelling it. And this group of kiddos is actually, if you can see it closely, there's like some little hay in there, some sticks in there, all the houses. So they're going through the sequence of events. So they're learning as they go along. In this one, you can see not only are they doing the boat, there's the stories that go along with it. They're working on fine motor skills. They're working on that rhyming that goes along, that's in there. A lot of different skills go into those.
Jill, can I jump in on this?
Yep.
Because one of the things I just want to highlight here that it's so important that we have this multimodality instruction. There's a lot of debate that you've probably heard some of it publicly about kids just need to play. And, well, no, kids just need to learn. And we actually think it's both. So this type of instruction is critically important because they're, by all account, like they're playing, they're drawing, but they're singing, they're learning rhyming words, they're learning, they're learning letter sounds, they're writing at the earliest stages. It's intentional play.
Yeah, purposeful, intentional play. And the next one, this is an example in Wonders, they're doing science. So the student is not just making a cloud. If you can see there, they have the Chromebook up there. It has the information there. They're engrossed in the whole activity. But you can see over there was something they had cut out about a cloud that they're going to put on there. And these are preschool. These are our 3- and 4-year-olds engaging in the curriculum. It's not just they're sitting there painting. It's actually purposeful and very intentional of the skills that they're learning. And this one shows a little bit too, the kiddos with the earth. That was part of our Wonders program. But again, very purposeful. They're learning about the oceans, they're learning about continents. And on the other picture, this is a combination of some of the things they're doing with Wonders for the language, but it's also part of our math expressions. They're not just looking at the animals, they're counting, they're comparing. And part of this too, which you can see, I don't know if you can see it on the little, the vent, it says turn and talk. And you're going to see a picture in a minute, but on this, you can see they're going to talk to each other about what's happening. So the kids aren't just sitting there using counting the animals, they're actually interacting with each other. So they're being taught to do that. This one is actually showing you some of our math expressions. The kids are counting, and not only on this sheet are they just counting. One of them talks about they're counting and they're writing numbers. One of them is they're deciding what's different, and they talk about why it's different. And then on the other side, they're actually labeling. You can see some of those little labels. They're labeling the pieces and parts of, it could be the house, it could be a barn, it could be a door, it could be a window. So it's not just they're pointing, they're seeing the words, even though someone's reading it for them, but they're kind of engrossed in the literacy of it all, not just the picture naming, but the words that go along with them. And this one I love. This was some of my favorite pictures. This is a turn and talk. So the kiddos get part of the Wonders. They have little books that go along in the kids. So the kids are actually, you can see them. One of the students is showing them the book and explaining it to them, and they take turns going back and forth. So the kids are able to either answer a question to each other, explain what they're understanding and what they're reading. But these are little groups of 3- and 4-year-olds who are being taught how to share the information and learn from each other.
And listening to the dialogue is hilarious.
It is. Yeah. But you can even see the one at the bottom, the little girl, she's actually holding the book like the teacher would, just like this. And he's looking at that. So our kids are actually engaging, in the curriculum, the things that we're doing. We also have math expressions, and our math expressions, again, it's not just about just counting. They're exploring, they're discussing, they're demonstrating their skills. The lessons are very active, and in both of these programs, besides engaging with the teacher and the lessons, there are centers set up in the classroom for the kids to actually continue to work on these skills. Some of them are in the form of games, and some of them in the form of, actual individual types of activities that the kids are going to. There's a lot of manipulatives with the math expressions, maps. There's a lot of things on the walls that the kids are even getting up and pointing to. This is where the one goes. They're also working on shapes, so geometry, and they're getting into expressions, again, at this early, late age. So they're getting to understand the vocabulary in math, the shapes, the numbers, the counting, the comparing. So they are doing, this through the math expressions as well. These are some of our kiddos working on the one of the activity mats, putting the shapes down. And there's also conversation that goes on with these. What's the shape? How many sides? What color it is? The matching and sorting. These are some of the activities that the kids may be doing. This is at a math center, and it's part of our math expressions. And then you can see some of our kiddos actually engaging in their math centers. And what's really nice is the kids will know. So you can see a lot of, again, it's not just the shapes, there's a lot of the language is there, what the center is all about, all the manipulatives, they're colorful, and they're actually engaging it. They're not just building something. A lot of the times you'll have the kids go in, you see them blocks, and they're just stacking them. They're actually engaging in the activities. Another thing, well, before I go on to assessment, does anyone have any questions about programs we're using?
How do they get it all done in 2.5 hours?
So part of it is they do whole class. Well, some kids come 5 days, some kids 4, some kids 3. So what we've also done is, for example, with the math, because it's new, they found that they have some centers, but we have some kids who are a little bit above that and some kids who need a little bit more. So we went through and through a grant, which was great, we were able to look at, are there different types of math activities that we can also set up with centers that all the teachers have? So we want to make sure that they're doing that, but they do. And they do have to adjust, because you're right, some kids come 2, 3, 4, and 5 days, but the lessons are kind of on a weekly cycle, and they can keep, going through them and have other centers set up and assign kids to those centers. But it builds a nice foundation.
Jill, how does it differ from year to year? So you have 3-year-olds, and you'll have 4, 5, and potentially, 3 years of the same program?
Yep. So what you'll see is it might be the skill that they're working on. So say we're doing math. Our 3-year-olds, and you're going to see some assessment data, might just be engaging in recognizing what a number is and that it corresponds to, an amount. As they turn 4, and some of them turn 5 when they're in preschool, it might be putting those together, finding the differences. So each center that they have, it can be a little bit different for each kid. You notice that one of them had like 1 through 10. Well, our 3-year-olds might be working, they might start with just the number 1, then the 3, then the 5. And then by the time they're in 4 and 5, they might be going all the way through. So yes, it's the same, programs we're using, but within it, you can differentiate. And there was a slide which, that I think I showed you the scope and sequence. It was way back in the beginning. That's okay. But on the right-hand side, it talks about differentiated pathways. So it gives you some ideas of what you can do with kids who are excelling, kids who are having a little more challenging, some of our English language students, and some of our special education students. So there are things that are right in there. Because we want to make sure that if our kids are ready for more, they're getting more. That's a goal.
Thank you.
Goal of it. So those are our programs, but there's another part to all of this too. You hear a lot about STAR, you hear a lot about MCAS, you hear a lot about our, mid-cycle and progress reviews. We actually have an assessment in preschool now. So what we do is, it's called My IGDs, which is, if I didn't have it up there, I wouldn't remember. It's the Individual Growth and Development Indicators, and it's an assessment that actually is part of Renaissance. Renaissance also puts out STAR. So it's part of a Renaissance. It's not connected yet to STAR, but they're working on that. And what it is, it's individual assessments that the teachers give to students. It takes about 5 or 10 minutes. They do it individually. They have the option to either do it on the iPad or paper. They all chose paper. They didn't want the kids to kind of be distracted by the iPad. And what they do is there's actual individual assessments for that. That's for our 4-year-olds. We decided to only do the My IGDs for our 4-year-olds so we can get a sense of where they come in with us, where they're leaving, and are they ready for kindergarten. Then there's also an assessment called Pro Ladder that we're doing for our 3-year-olds. No, don't go on yet. For our 3-year-olds. And for our 3-year-olds, that is more of a checklist. So what happens is the students 3-year-olds may be engaged in some activities, and the teachers are checking off what they can do, what they're doing well, where their skills fall, as well as some of their social skills, social, emotional. So we have that's happening as well, and it's taking place 2 times a year. And you can see up there, it talks about the fact that it's brief, it's engaging for the kids. It is one-on-one, which the teachers really do like that, one-on-one time with their teachers. And it is actionable, and you'll see when we get the scores, it gives the teachers a sense of, without having to guess, this is where they're coming in and this is what their skills are showing us, so then they know where to move from. Okay. So in My IGDs, they test early numeracy and early literacy, and these are the skills that they're actually assessing: the oral counting, the number naming, the quantity comparison, and the one-to-one correspondences. And then the early literacy, the picture naming, which is the oral language, the rhyming, the alliteration, which isn't done until the second part of the year because the kids need to develop skills, the sound ID, the alphabet knowledge, and also which one doesn't belong. And the phonological awareness, just, when you put, it's the awareness and ability to work with the sounds and language. For kids, it's really important. It's not just being able to hear it, you have to identify it and be able to say it and be able to put it all together. So these are the results of our first administration of our 4-year-olds for My IGDs. This was done earlier in the year. So this is where the kids' skills were when they came into school. And actually, the preschool teachers are in the process of administering the second part of it now. So we'll have more information the end of May, June, which I can definitely share out to see what kind of growth we saw. So if you look at the at-risk, that would be, when that comes up on our scores, it's like the red area. These are the areas that we have some concerns. These are areas that we really should focus on. Moderate means they're kind of in the middle. We're not quite sure where their progress is going to be. And then some strong skills. So if you kind of look at the numeracy, you're going to see that a lot of our kiddos came in with some moderate skills, but may not have had a lot of the access and development of some of those skills before they actually came to school. Same thing at the bottom when it came to the literacy. The only thing you'll see for the alliteration, I told you, is an NA, but that will be looking in the May score. But again, if you look at those, you can see we do have some kiddos that we really need to work on some of those specific skills. A lot fell in the moderate, but if you look at the strong skills, it looks like literacy was a little bit stronger than math. But again, those are only the percentages of our kids that have those skills. So we know, look, going into this, we definitely had some work to do this year. So what the preschool team does, just like all of our other teams do, is they look at those scores and say, okay, where are our areas of strength based on the data, not just what we think, where are our areas of opportunity, and what are going to be our next steps. So when the preschool team met, they had an opportunity to share. When we looked at all this, the majority of our 4-year-olds had some good skills when it came to oral counting, number naming, and one-to-one correspondences, but they really struggled with the rhyming, sound ID, and quantity comparison. And it was interesting, they all had a conversation, like, we don't understand, we do rhymes all the time, but they never explicitly taught it. So the kids may be saying a rhyme, not understanding, well, wait a minute, you know what I mean? There is something that's going on here that we need to know more about. So because of these skills, they've decided to, again, they're going to dive a little bit deeper into the numeracy data so they know where to go with kids. Like you mentioned, what happens to the kids if they do it a couple of years, we keep moving them forward. They want to explicitly teach rhyming, and they're going to start incorporating foundations, which is a very phonetically based program for our younger students to allow for more of that sound practice. And they definitely started doing their center activities. So in the past, if you came to our preschool about 5 years ago, you would see kids just, playing with a doll or, just playing in the sand. Now you're going to actually see purposeful, very intentional activities that the kids are working on to help identify, some of these areas.
Jill, with the rhyming, so they're teaching the kids the rhymes, but they're not teaching them the phonemic awareness of the phonics around the
Correct.
actual sounds,
Right.
the letters and the consonant
Right.
blends and the vowel blends they
Correct.
actually make.
Right.
So now they're shifting to that.
They are.
Okay.
Yeah, so if they're looking at cat, mat, sat, they're teaching them what sounds alike. Well, it's that, the little sound families.
Short A,
They were just teaching them rhymes before.
Yeah.
So they're like, we've always done it. We don't understand why. And they said, oh my gosh, but we're not explicitly teaching it. They're just learning rhymes like they'd learn a song. And then this is the pro ladder, which is for our 3-year-olds. So again, I told you this was kind of in a survey. It was a checkoff sheet. The areas that the teachers who assess the kids, it's social, emotional, the creativity and the arts, language and literacy, their overall cognitive skills, how they approach learning, and their physical and motor. And if you look again, we do have some kids, if you look under the strong, it is a little bit smaller of a population of students who are showing those strong skills right now. We have a better group in the moderate, but we did have a pretty high number in the at-risk, so I'd be very interested to know, how that, pans out when we do it the second time. So this is for our 3-year-olds. Okay. So before I go on to share the last few pictures, because they sent me so many, any questions about the assessments we're doing for our kiddos in preschool? It's kind of taking the guesswork out of it for some of these things for our kids. So I did ask, again, besides the teachers, Mrs. Schaefer to share some pictures, so I just put them up there because it's always great to see our preschool kids in action. And there you go. And of course, the little ones in the middle, that must have been the 100th day of school or something. They're supposed to be, I think, old people, so. Thank you. Any questions?
So we really didn't have an assessment in place before?
No. Mm-mm. No, not like a STAR, not like an MCAS, not at all. But this is great too, because then we get that data, we can send it along to the kindergarten teachers, kind of like we do now, our K to 1, our 1s to 2.
That was a hard shift. It was a hard shift
yes.
to move the K and 1, particularly the K teachers years back, to move more toward like a standards-based instruction,
Yeah.
play integrated with learning in the preschool. Yeah, it was hard. It was hard for people
Yeah.
to change, in their
It is.
practices and collecting data and using it to, it was a tough shift for them, but they're doing a nice job.
Yeah. And it's nice to see the kids, because I think sometimes when you look at this, you're like, how are 3- and 4-year-olds supposed to, they're doing it.
They're doing it. Yeah.
They are doing it.
I have a 2.5-year-old niece who will be going to the preschool program in the fall, and to
Nice.
see
Yeah.
what she'll be doing, like that's,
Yeah, she'll be into all
Yeah.
of that. Yeah.
It is.
It's awesome.
Yep. And like I said, it is a big shift, you're right, like Jason was saying, but I think once you get into it and you see the results and you see the kids learning and growing, you become very invested.
Yeah.
Do you anticipate any changes in the kindergarten because of the data that's being?
Well, that's what we're hoping, yeah. So this is our first year really having both programs in place, our first year for the math. So we will definitely look at that. When the kids come into kindergarten, when they do their first STAR assessment, we'll definitely take a look at that and see where they are. And I do think next year, because again, this was their first year of doing the MyIGDs, they're gonna be more comfortable with it. They're doing it the second time, they'll start again in the fall. And we're hoping, we may end up doing, right now, we're doing it twice a year, but depending on it might be just like STAR, the beginning, the middle, and the end. But with our 3-year-olds, we felt very strongly, and we researched this, to keep it, with the survey. And assess our 4s.
And they can give feedback to parents that's
Yes.
more than just your child's a pleasure to have in class.
Yes.
Like, that's great, thank you for sharing that. How can I help at home,
Yes.
right? Like, what can I do?
Yeah.
They can do that now.
Yep. Great.
It seems like it's all lining up.
Yes.
It is.
That has been.
Very good. That's very nice. Any other questions for Jill on preschool? Do we want to keep going and take us into this page?
Yeah. So underneath the business office report, in your packets, you have a couple of financial materials. You have the usual school committee report that tracks our expenditures that we look at every month. But behind that, you have an FY23 fiscal use that allowed FY24 operating budget to be at 3.5%. You have a separate document. The reason for the FY23 fiscal use document, and I know that's a wonky title, I'm sorry, I couldn't think of what else to call that. But those were the big items that we used to help us offset, if you remember, some of the big items we used to help us offset FY24. I want to highlight these because these are directly connected to FY23. So the remaining amount in FY23 is going to support the items that are on this sheet. And so I wanted to make sure that you had, just as a refresh, because I feel like the budget workshops were, 100 years ago at this point. And these were some of the items, if you remember, we landed on to say, how can we utilize some of our leftover FY23 resources to help us bring that FY24 expenditures to a place where our towns could support the assessments in the budget. So we had talked about $116,000 being used because we are allowed to prepay collaborative tuitions. And so we looked at 2 students that was built into the budget. We talked about the social studies curriculum. And again, thank you very much for approving that this evening. So we do not need to put that in next year's budget. We talked about looking at some of those general supplies that we would be able to support in this year's budget, again, so we don't need to buy them after July 1. And we talked about our health insurance premiums. We are able to help offset that as well. So you'll also note that we discussed moving $250,000 from circuit breaker expenses this year to our general budget because we can roll over circuit breaker dollars. So you might remember when you all sent us back to do a little more work before we recertified, one of those things that we did was recommend moving $250,000 actually out of circuit breaker in FY23 onto our local budget, which is reflected in this number tonight, we'll talk about in a moment, so that we can take that $250,000, we can roll that forward and then charge additional special education expenses against that next year. So again, that was another, offset, so to speak, to help us with that. The other thing that's important to note is that we have applied for the technology federal reimbursement of $250,000. So I don't know when we're going to receive that, but I just wanted to just mark it here because it will be in our general budget for FY23 at some point, and then we hope the next few weeks. So when we look at that number, if you go to the second page of the budget expenditure report, and you go all the way down to the bottom of the budget balance, you'll see 829.42. These dollars, the 116, the 180, the 50 in general supplies, the 50 in health insurance, is going to come out of that 820. So right now, that's looking like we may have a balance of somewhere around 420,000. But I want to be clear, we worked really hard with our cost center managers to encumber everything that we're going to need between now and June 30th. We know stuff is going to come up. We know we're going to get additional invoices from Telstones. I mean, we know that. So I just want to put that out front because we know that this is, as hard as we're trying to give the best and most accurate number, it's not going to be 100%. We also know that we have money encumbered through different vendors that we'll be able to release some of that back into our budget. So just as for instance, we might have $50,000 encumbered with WB Mason, and we may realize that we actually are only going to need 30,000 of that. So we can release 20 back into our budget. Does that make sense? So as much as we're trying to nail down this moving target, we're still going to have some ebbs and flows, pluses and minuses. The other thing that and the reason I put it on this FY23 fiscal use sheet is just as a reminder, that $250,000 of reimbursement, that's not in this number. We don't have it yet. So we didn't reflect that in the 820 because that reimbursement check has not come in yet. So we know that number is going to go up by that reimbursement check. So we just wanted to give a sense to the school committee of where we think we're going to land, knowing that there are still going to be pluses and minuses over the next couple of months. Scott is working with Denise and re-establishing that small capital planning committee. Remember that smaller group that looked at those capital projects to prioritize things like some of the athletics work, things like the paving, playground, wood chips, all of those kinds of projects. So they are restarting that small capital planning group to get some recommendations to the school committee for May 25th. So that there's no rush, we're not scrambling, we'll have some time for the school committee to look over what some things are that they may want to do, that you may want to do. I'm sorry, I'm talking as if you're not sitting in front of me, that you may want to do with those dollars as we near the fiscal year. And again, an important variable in all of this is the capital stabilization fund. So we have to just keep that in mind too, as we're moving forward. Denise, did I miss anything?
No.
Okay.
No, we covered all the topics.
Okay.
Does anyone have any questions about the numbers?
Okay. I know it's not a new, report or a new issue, but Denise has been hard at work trying to get this number as close to,
Yes.
yeah.
Just locating expenses, tracking down revenue, and cleaning it all up so that the fiscal year will end cleanly.
That is the goal. Okay. Jill, did you want to give a quick update? One of the things we really delved deeply into was the special education, the payments to collaboratives. Do you want to just give a quick overview on why we have that balance there?
Sure. So we originally, if you look at that budget sheet on the second page, our payments to collaboratives, in our general budget, we had budgeted approximately $967,000 for that. You'll notice if you go across, it's saying that there's going to, at the end of this year, there's going to be $742,000. So you're probably thinking, did you pay your bills? We did, but there were definitely things that offset that. So when we went through that, we had, remember last year, we also did a prepayment to the collaborative of $100,000, okay? So that's part of it. We also used a $400,000 grant to offset some of our tuitions. We had $80,000 in savings for students who either left school or graduated. And we had another $40,000. We had a student who didn't return to district. They or actually returned to district, so they didn't go back to the collaborative. And then we saved about $120,000. We had a student who did not return to did not come back to school at all. So when you look at that, yeah, which is $120,000. I mean, some of the tuitions are, range from $40,000 all the way up to, it could be $250,000. So in that line, you can see, yes, we paid our bills. Yes, we budgeted correctly. It's just here are a lot of offsets that came in, for us. It was the same thing when if you look at the tuition of non-public. If you look at the number we budgeted, about $830,000, we're going to be remaining about $248 because we had a couple of students who either graduated early or completed schooling at about $183,000, and we had one student who moved, which is a $65,000 expense.
These are just variables that we don't, the bulk of them that we don't have any
Yep.
control over.
Right.
From that perspective.
Right. And sometimes it's the opposite.
I was just
which
gonna say,
I don't
'cause
even
it
want to
could have
say
just
it.
been
I want to
the
not.
opposite.
Yeah.
We could have received a $350,000 tuition.
It has
Yes.
happened.
Right? Yeah.
Yes, and it has happened.
So it is nice to be on the other end of that.
Yes.
As far as the financial piece is concerned. We thought it would be important to look at that,
So
because
you know,
that's
yeah.
such a significant amount that we wanted you to know where that came from.
Right.
And then lastly, we have Denise has a brief OPEB update.
Oh, yes.
Is that okay to
Remember,
move to
back
the-
in
yeah.
February of 2022, we did a GASB 75, which is it's a risk analysis, and we started the OPEB. That all came into action. And then we have since been investing. In our March report, we have 164,000 in there, and we just put another 50,000. Our teachers are regularly contributing. We've rolled that out. We're going to be rolling that out over the summer for administrators to be contributing. And then next year, we're going to be putting part of the negotiations for our Unit C to also be contributing. So lots of different ways where revenue is going there, and we're planning.
So Denise, the 164 and what was in there in March, and then we added the 50, the
Yes,
school
we
committee
did. I'm so
certified to
sorry.
move.
We did have the 50 that you got, that certified, that went in this month in April. So my next analysis and evaluation sharing the dollars to you will reflect that.
Very good.
Thank
Quick
you.
update there. You know that's a hot button issue.
It is, because as passed around in our reading folder, we were contacted by the town of Millville in regards to our OPEB funding. So, thank you for that update, Denise.
Thank you.
So moving on to facilities.
Good evening.
Thank you for your patience.
Not a problem.
Late night.
This is very educational on the Millville water.
I think we all needed it, unfortunately, the history and the,
Yeah. I just want to say there will be no Bill Murray reenactment of Caddyshack. We're blowing up the dam.
but have you seen them? Beaver.
I have not seen the beavers. I've seen their huts, and I've seen the dam that's adjacent to the
We will
roadway.
see them, Scott.
And then you won't.
I just want to say I'm an animal
They're not
lover,
like a
so I will not be
protected
killing.
They're not,
Species,
right?
right?
No.
They're not,
Relocation.
right?
No,
Okay.
We will see the beavers.
they can be relocated.
A trap and relocated.
On to facilities, Scott.
Don't give away any secrets.
I want to beat everybody up.
On to facilities.
So the high school, we're still waiting for the weather to cooperate for the tennis courts to be resurfaced. Since I drafted up this, we discovered a leak in the trophy display case outside of the gymnasium. The ceiling's starting to crumble. Went up on the roof, saw a little gap where the roofing material meets the wall. They put a flashing. Looks like the water may be seeping in under that, so we're gonna re-caulk that. And also where the two buildings meet on the exterior, the caulking is all cracked, so we're gonna reseal that and hope it solves the problem. Millville, the building automation system was completed on April 20th. Everything is up and running as it should be, including the exhaust fans that were tied into this unit as well, this system. So that's good news. Did reach out to the insurance company, and they're just waiting for the bill to come in from Siemens to make the payment. JFK, the heating pipe in the boiler room, industrial burner has come out since I drafted this up. Looked at it, I'm just waiting for a quote. They did say it would have to be done in the off-season because they're gonna have to drain the water out of the boiler system. Make the repairs. Middle school, discovered a leak in room 315. The paint on the wall started blistering, so over April vacation, they stripped the paint off, fixed the leak, and repainted the wall. There was no signs of mold or anything. And at the same time, all the rooftop units were greased, lube, change of filters, as well as the exhaust fans. Had to replace some belts and grease the bearings. There's one or two motors that may be bad. We're gonna have to have the electrician check out on the exhaust fans. Grounds, F-650 plow truck, the dump body on it is completely rotted through. Telestone would not put a sticker on it. One option is to take the dump body completely off and bolt the sander right to the frame. I'm waiting on an estimate for that. We'll have to add some fenders to the rear wheels, but probably looking at around 3,000.
What year is that truck?
That truck was bought 2 years after the middle school opened, so I believe it's a 2005 or 6.
Is that the only one we have? Didn't we?
That is the larger truck that looks just like the towns have. We do have a small pickup truck with a plow on it. Unfortunately, we'll lose the dump body. It was always good
for
for.
anything else except for a sander?
In the past, we've used it to get some rock, sand, stone, loam, mulch. To be honest, a smaller truck with a dump body would be more practical, because we'd be able to get it into the courtyard at the high school and dump the mulch directly into the mulch beds. And the parking lots were swept and the sidewalks were blown off of all sand and salt. Towns came in and did all the schools, including JFK. And Millville was done as well, assuming the town of Millville. And that is all I have. Any questions, concerns? Very good.
Any questions? Thank you again for
You're welcome.
the update.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you, Scott.
And we have some use of facility requests.
Some of them already happened.
Oh,
I know, it was one of, we had the town of Blackstone, the town meeting,
last night,
yes.
or the night before.
The New Human Club, which Aaron Annabali is running, it's a basketball. They had a couple of dates already.
I was just going to point out that these are new sheets.
Yes, they are.
Yes.
Not that they've already happened.
So we had a couple of activities that have happened already. The BMR cheerleading banquet is this Saturday. And then there's the BMYBL Basketball League, and that's for the summer. So the basketball league and the cheerleading have not happened yet, but the other ones have started. And these have all been vetted by the administration and in the calendar. And they're on the new form.
Okay.
Did I miss one?
I don't think you did. Someone was asking me about where to get this form the other day.
Yes.
I don't see any requests from that person.
No,
so
it's not in here. I never got the,
It can be approved later. I don't know what the date was for, so. So looking for a motion to approve the use of facility requests as presented.
So moved.
Motion made by Kerry. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ted. Any questions? We're approving in the rear also, as duly noted. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? It's unanimous. Thank you.
thank you so much. That concludes the facilities report.
And we just have to go backwards to page 1 for a few items on the school committee. MSBA update. We don't have Kara here, but quickly we can update that.
Yeah, do you want to fast?
There's something specific that I was going to. Oh, the tours that you went
Yeah.
on last week. Yeah.
Yeah, it was great. So we had a tour last Wednesday, 2 tours last Wednesday of our high school. We had one family join Scott. And then on Friday, we went to Stoughton High School. We had a family join us, which was great. She brought her daughter, it's a first grader. It made the tour all the better, frankly. Denise, Scott, and I had an opportunity to go, and we met with the architects and the principal and the construction of the building, which was actually great to have him there from Consigli, because they don't normally do that. But he was so intimately involved with the actual construction. The building itself opened in 2019, and the detail was just meticulous. The way it was designed around the kids, around the staff, all optimized for safety, the athletics, the arts, the science labs. I mean, it was just a beautiful thing to see, frankly. And to hear of the planning and the detail and the description that went into every nook and cranny of that building. Much bigger than what we would need. You know, they had about 1,183 students, so it's a much bigger building. We'd only need a fraction. But their use of space, their use of pulling in the old building, the stuff that was really important to the community, they built right into the new construction. So it was that respecting tradition, but really blazing the trail for what's to come for the kids in the community. The principal was a graduate of the district, which was awesome. She's been there's a teacher there and a principal there for 11 years, lives in town. She knew that building inside and out. She picked the colors, the bricks, with the staff and the school building committee. It was just a sight to be seen. And having April was our mom that came, and her daughter Nora. I think Nora laid on every floor in the, in the building. The only room, she didn't like the boiler room. She's like, oh, it's hot in here. The school store was great. She really enjoyed that. And the classrooms were awesome. The optimal, just the use of space. I mean, glass as far as your eyes can see. Natural lighting. I mean, right? It was
Yeah,
pretty.
it was a lot of natural light. It was beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, I hope we have more of those.
We definitely will.
With the contractors joining us.
Yeah, they were great. I mean, he was really able to, I think his name was Kevin, but he was able to explain, I mean, they even designed the tile on the floor as a, go ahead.
Were there other MSBA people, like, was it just for you?
Yeah, it was just for us. Yeah.
That blows my mind that they.
It's us. What do you mean?
2019.
Surprised by that?
They're very proud of it. It was
Yeah.
and we were there, we took up 2.5 hours of their
Oh,
time.
yeah, we
It
took
was
a
very
huge
thorough.
amount. Yeah.
They told us about every nook and cranny.
Mm-hmm.
And the thoughtfulness
It's a
that went
lot.
behind everything. There wasn't anything that just happened. Everything was kind of planned.
They even put
Amazing.
on the floor the sight line if you had an unwanted visitor in your school, right? Somebody that, a school intruder situation. Every classroom had the floor tile. It was weird when we noticed it. We're like, what
Yes,
is this?
what is
It like, it all kind of went out like this, and they did the sight line. So without even thinking, you get to the left of the green on the floor in every classroom. Then you're out of the sight line of the glass on the side of the door. I mean, literally to the tile. Like the detail was meticulous.
Yeah.
In the planning that went into that.
Did she give you an idea of where they had looked at, places that they had looked?
No, they didn't talk too much about that. They had just said that it was something that their high school was very old, and they had a really unique design because they only had this tiny, like Soton's pretty well built out, so they only had this tiny like footprint they could build on. So they built behind the old school, almost like we've kind of talked about, like building on one side and then moving the kids and then deconstructing. Like they kind of did something
Yeah.
similar.
It's a 30-foot distance from their current building,
Yeah.
and they were in that. They were building that far away.
So I don't know how much they saw, only because they really didn't have any space. Like they had this tiny little plot was the only thing they could really work with. I'm sure they did, but it was, yeah. It was really interesting to hear their story.
What were the sports and music facilities like? Because they're rather similar to us.
Oh my gosh, amazing. Like the music labs, the black box, what's it called, the black box, the black room, the acting room.
The dark room.
Oh, no, the acting room.
Oh,
They had
yeah, that one.
Yeah, they had
Yes,
like
the
this
sound
acting room. They had all like the sectional sound rooms that were all acoustically
Yeah,
set up.
they were soundproofed and
My
different,
gosh.
all the features, everything you could imagine. They could explain everything when you walked in a room, so they went into great detail to explain why they did this, what was the reasoning behind it and the purpose, and how they've been experiencing it, how well it's worked out, or they've even were able to point out to us mistakes that they had made so that we would be aware in our own. So that was a great thing to also hear.
And you know what really struck me was the art that was all over, and by art I mean like photos and even like the screens that were running, it was all the kids did it. So like when you walked into the entryway, there's this sweeping staircase that goes up to a library media center, but they call it something else, a learning commons they call it. But they had these like huge panels of photos of band, their athletes, drama, almost every group you could imagine. And the kids did it. The kids took these photos and they made these like photo tiles, and it was kids as far as the eyes could see. The videos all had highlights of track meets, basketball games.
Streaming all the time.
All streaming and all the time, and all of so everywhere you looked, you saw the kids. I mean, it was pretty powerful.
Sounds like a dream.
It was pretty powerful, yeah. So that was really great. And we have a capital planning meeting on,
May 3rd.
yes, Wednesday, right?
Yep. 6 PM, BMR.
Thank you for that update. Next up, we have our school committee calendar that we talked about briefly in our last meeting, and I'll keep it brief this time. This is just a proposed with one meeting per month. But more importantly, what we need to talk about will be some subcommittees that we typically have, I think the biggest difference here will be a finance subcommittee, but capital planning, we kind of already have in place for the time being until we need an actual building committee. So finance subcommittee, I think what we're looking for is a smaller group of us that can do multiple functions. Maybe most importantly, signing the warrants. If we are only going to have one meeting per month, that might be something that we as a larger committee vote to let that subcommittee do, sign those warrants for us. So those are things we'll talk about. Policy subcommittee, basically keeping our policies up to date. We've done a lot of work in the last 5 years to get them up to date. Some of them had not been updated since the 70s, until we did the work in the last 5 years. So that would be a smaller group of us that would come together when needed. Sometimes it's to review, sometimes, so we have them through MASC right now, and will continue to. But sometimes they'll send us an updated Massachusetts policy, and we would need to vote to, so you'd bring it to us. Superintendent evaluation, it has typically been 1 or 2 committee members that work with the superintendent to create the goals. Mid-year, he kind of goes through and briefs that subcommittee on, what evidence he's got. And then it's presented to all of us in a whole. And then Google Forms are created by that subcommittee for all of us to collaborate on. Negotiations is a very big one. And we are negotiating next year with Unit C. It is a time commitment. I'm not going to lie and sugarcoat it. It is a lot of work. Usually though, when you start, the dates. They'll say like, we're gonna do every Tuesday for this many weeks and see where we're at, or, something like that. But it is a commitment and it is necessary. We do have to be represented. They typically show up with 10 to 12 people. So, our admin team will be there, but we need, it is budget, it is part of us, so we need to be represented. Sick bank is only as needed. We had one tonight. It was super quick. Usually 2 committee members are a good number. So anyway, any questions about any of those, honestly, just email me in the next weeks. And if you have questions about what the subcommittee is, what it would entail, or if you're interested in one, shoot me an email, because at our next meeting, I would like to delegate who is on what subcommittee for the upcoming school year. I think I covered all that.
I'm sorry, did you put that list in here?
It's on the
It's right on the agenda.
Oh, it is. Hello.
Yes. There's no description, so feel free to reach out to me.
Those aren't online though, right? The ones online,
So honestly, they should be, but I don't think they've been updated
No, they
since
haven't. They
haven't updated them,
2018.
no.
yeah, they're very old.
Since
Okay.
two-
Yeah, very
so-
old.
and these are
I did look for them
different.
Before, yeah.
These are different. We have kind of used what we needed in the past few years. We have not had a finance subcommittee. I think last time we had it, we called it a budget subcommittee, and it ended up being the whole committee. Because that could even go into budget work for next fiscal year, but, so if you want more of a description.
Reach out.
Yeah. And just review, we'll approve a calendar at our next meeting. I don't think we had this on here as action required.
We
Yes,
do.
we did, but, we could table this.
Want to table that?
And the calendar as it is, just to make sure. So the July date is necessary because of the budget, closing the books. Obviously, February and April, we have school vacations that we need to work around. And if we, so what I did notice is we said we would keep 2 in January and February, but we're gonna leave that open for
The
workshops. Okay,
Is that okay?
yeah. So do you want to table this, or do you want to vote on this calendar as it stands for our working school committee meetings? It's up to you guys.
Is that August one, like, set in stone?
No, nothing is until we vote on it. August, of this August. 10th.
August, yeah, August 10th. I know I'm away that week.
You want to?
Do you have any summer restrictions?
The first week in August.
Okay.
I'm taking the kids camping, I think. They don't know that yet, but.
I'm actually away the same time as you.
The 10th?
Yeah.
Okay.
You want us, we can move it later, maybe closer to the start of the year?
Yeah, is that too much of a gap from July? I mean, summer.
If we have a finance subcommittee, actually, I'm just thinking of the warrants, like, that we'll have to pay. That might be hard to.
But people can come in and sign
This is true.
if we do that the right way.
Yeah,
So-
that's true. We could do that. So maybe move the first week to a later.
Like how much later? Like August 31st?
I'm gone.
It's just,
like the
that is a
9th
busy
through the-
time of year it's going to be.
You want to do the 24th? No?
17th?
Okay, how about the week school starts?
Yeah, the 31st? Or would you want to meet before?
You want to
school?
do it before so that, like, we can do a kickoff and a lunch and like maybe the 28th, that Monday? I know we had said Thursdays, but
Yeah.
the July meeting is July 10th on a Monday, so.
That's a busy day for you, though. That is the day staff returns.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. We're already very well planned before they get here, so that's not an issue.
So Monday, the 28th?
Would you want to do that?
That works for me. Evening?
Whatever the committee, whatever you'd prefer.
So we're keeping our meetings at 6 PM, I believe, right? We all decided that. All right, so moving August to August 28th, which will be the first week of school.
That means we won't meet from July 10th to August 28th.
You won't miss us that much.
I think you will all miss me.
You'll see us. Fast and furious summer.
It goes very quick, yeah, that's for sure.
I'm also wondering if we should move December up, giving us an extra, well, I think it's fine. We can make changes if we need to. Right, so I'm either looking for a motion to table it or to approve it with the
I'll
change.
make a motion to table it.
Okay, motion made by Chuck to table the approval of the school committee calendar. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Matt. Any other requests for changes or, okay. So all those in favor of tabling the calendar, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Can I ask a clarifying question? Chuck, do you want me to make the change on this for the 28th when I bring back another draft? Is that what everybody wants to do? Or do you want me to bring back the draft we have?
So I'm unsure, like, of my own schedule.
Oh, okay, all right. Okay, no problem.
We just need a little more time.
So we'll just leave it the way it is and then you can change it.
You
later.
can, might as well change the August one, since we did just banter
Yeah.
that. And then we'll see what else comes back. If you have any that are, you can let me know ahead of time, and that way we can present it as accurate as possible. All right, so, and again, just email me for your interest on a subcommittee. I'll be waiting anxiously for those emails. And last but not least, in our reading folder, it was the Board of Director for Representative for FICO, which is,
Me.
I think we just need to
You have to
vote
that,
and
yes.
sign. So, this is kind of like a maintenance item. looking for a motion to appoint Dr. DeFalco as the director representative for BICO representing our district.
So moved.
Okay, motion made by Ted, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Kerry. Any questions? It was in the reading folder that we fill this out. This is done yearly. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That's unanimous. We'll fill that out. Did I miss anything on this page? Just
Nope.
because we skipped around.
I think you got it.
So moving on to school committee forum. Does anyone have any, we didn't have student reps, and I know we're 3 hours in here, but any activities, highlights, or anything to share?
I have a quick question first. For athletics, I had a parent of a fifth grader ask me the other day what middle school sports they can play. Is there a way that Sam could put together a handout to send home with our fifth graders before they finish the school year, letting them know, like even just the process, how to sign up on the family ID, what sports are eligible for sixth graders and all of that? Or even while our senior interns are at the elementary school, if they could do a little like fall sports, or actually it doesn't even have to just be fall, like whatever sports are available, just let some of the students talk it up and maybe we can get that next crop interested in playing sports and.
Especially have a turnout like track did.
Yes.
Rally.
Absolutely.
And I know tomorrow Sam is taking 2 of our high school students into Boston for Girls and Women in Sports Day. So he'll have a fun day with that. And our seniors have their prom tomorrow.
Seems so early.
Yeah.
And it's so cold. Hope the girls got fur.
He'll brave it.
Everything gets some. Sorry, wait.
I don't know, they can't really go sloshing through those in their formal dresses.
Just keep taking notes.
Okay. Yes, prom is tomorrow. Where is it? Lake Pearl?
Yeah.
Lake Pearl?
No.
It's
Lakeview. Lakeview Pavilion.
Lakeview Pavilion.
Yes, I think I have it here.
I'm sure it'll be a great night. I have no idea how many tickets they sold.
I don't either.
but It's always a good time.
And we have the District of One event coming up, May 13th, right?
Rain or shine.
So National Honor Society induction, everyone received, everyone receive it, or did I just receive it?
No, I did too.
An email from Mr. Rowe, came to our school committee email, inviting us to attend. We're invited every year as school committee members. It is next Tuesday, March 2nd.
Yes.
At BMR. So there's no formal, you're just there as an invited guest. You don't have to speak or walk across stage. So that is Tuesday, May 2nd. If you didn't get the email, let me know, because I believe it went out to the full committee. Graduation is June 2nd. We typically get an invitation in the mail. Awards night is June 1st. We do have reserved seats for the committee at graduation. Not awards night, but we're invited. We also provide a breakfast to the seniors. We pay for it on graduation morning. Years and years ago, the committee went to that breakfast, but it has not happened in a long time, just so everybody knows. Next school committee meeting is May 11th, May 25th, and then June 8th. I'm just reading them because they're on here. And the last thing I will add for committee forum is the marching band had an amazing time in Disney. I believe the whole trip went off without a hitch. And everyone came home tired and fed. My goal was for no one to go hungry and I think that worked out well. If you haven't seen the video, you shared a YouTube link, so that was a great time. I'm sure Mr. Schaefer will be back very soon asking for another field trip for a few years from now, somewhere, I don't know. Is there anything else that the kids would normally have shared? I don't know. I feel like it's so close to the end of the year, we're missing something. Last day for the seniors, and their field trip. That whole senior week is
Yeah,
planned
the
for
senior
them.
week, they'd probably run through.
Yeah. Well, one of our reps is a junior, right?
Yep.
So we only need to replace one. All right, anyone else have anything else for forum? Any events to share or activities? All right, so I am looking for a motion to adjourn.
So motion.
To adjourn.
Motion made by Ted, second by Matt.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?